Revealing my brother's darkest secrets sparked an explosive Mother's Day confrontation, leading my family to cut ties with him. Years of repressed feelings and unresolved tensions exploded over the Mother's Day breakfast. For the sake of peace, our family continued to strive to maintain civility even though my brother Sam had always treated me badly. I was usually the silent one, wanting to be his buddy in spite of everything, and forgiving him for things I shouldn't have. For a long time I let him treat me whatever he pleased since I had no idea what a true sibling relationship should feel like when I was growing up. I've matured emotionally over the years and currently reside with my parents. I became resentful of Sam after realizing how poorly he had treated me, and I eventually stopped talking to him. Mother's Day followed. Sam and his fiancée Leah joined us for brunch. I went to help my mom even though I had a migraine because I was afraid Sam would abruptly cancel, as he frequently does. His only remarks were patronizing, but I hardly spoke to him. We went outdoors after lunch, and the heat was making my migraine worse. When I asked Sam to go, he became irate and told me that no one had requested me to come in the first place. The anxiety increased even after my mother swiftly defended me. I finally had enough. After years of frustration, I turned around and faced him. Sam had already acknowledged that he wasn't pleased with Leah, claiming that she made him miserable, but he was scared of being by himself, I reminded him. I practically reminded him of how he had wounded me. He once grabbed me by the neck and held me against a wall until I passed out when I attempted to stop him from driving while intoxicated. He has never shown regret for that night, the PTSD it created, or the grief he inflicted. Even the fact that he didn't come see me in the hospital following my injury or during my 3-month recuperation at home was disregarded by him. It was quite painful. His defense was feeble when he did reply. He asserted that my college residence was funded by our parents, as though that in some way excused his actions. They also covered him, I reminded him. Puffing up his chest, avoiding responsibility and challenging anyone to challenge him were all hallmarks of Sam. I made it plain that he was not a member of my family at that point and instructed him not to get in touch with me ever again. As they conversed, my dad gently led me back to the car. I had said everything I needed to say, so I didn't listen. My mom cut off Leah's attempt to clarify that Sam had denied me permission to stay with them due to their 2 enormous dogs. I never intended to bring my own dog Pebbles, but Sam had lied and said I did. Sam vowed that as long as I was around, he would never return to the house. Mom promptly put an end to my brother Sam's recent attempt to have my parents expel me. She said that it's entirely his fault and that I'm far higher on the family hierarchy than he is. Mom was first conflicted. As a mother, it was difficult for her to think about severing Sam's relationship even though she knew he was totally at fault. However, Mom acknowledged that she was incensed when I detailed all the horrible things he had done to me and other family members. Assuming that sibling arguments were common and that I was always the one who was fine, she even expressed regret for not disciplining him more when we were younger. Sam refused, saying he wasn't ready to deal with her yet, even though she texted him that an apology would be greatly appreciated. My parents informed me that they would not go to Sam's wedding if I was not invited. They desired that he be held accountable for his deeds. To be honest, the idea behind the wedding is that I wouldn't attend even if I were invited. I revealed to Mom that Sam had actually embezzled almost $800 from Dad over the years, which was more than we initially believed. I also disclosed that he had harmed me physically and mentally by having sex in both my parents and my beds. Despite all, Sam's success at work is solely due to Dad's efforts, and on Father's Day, he was unable to send a text. He became upset when Mom reminded him, saying it ruined his day. That really got us going. We became aware of how badly Sam had fouled things up as we vented. Both Sam and Leah, his fiancée, don't have many friends. She is angry that their grandmother won't give Leah's child all of her attention, so she doesn't talk to either her mother or her sister. Given that I enjoy organizing things, they most likely expected me to assist in planning their wedding, baby shower and other events. Now that Sam would make me dog sit without my consent, I don't know who will assist her. Years ago Leah made offensive remarks regarding babysitting, saying that Mom wouldn't want strangers watching her kids. This further strained her relationship with her mother. They probably thought I would act as the compassionate sister and offer assistance, but that isn't the case. Sam used to treat me like his therapist, but he didn't show any sympathy after my 14-year-old dog died. In the meantime, he revealed that he is afraid for the day she passes away since he wouldn't know what to do with one of his senior dogs. Well, he is no longer able to rely on me. Now that Leah is aware of Sam's actual feelings for her, I assume the engagement is tense. Leah is slowly coming to the realization that Sam has also lied to her about me. To be honest, I have no idea or interest in how it is going for them. Both of them are blocked. We even wager that Sam believes I'll give in and get him a present for his birthday without him having to say sorry. He will be rudely awakened. Dad was outraged and said, "I can't even trust my own family," after learning how much money Sam had stolen. For me, that was the tipping moment. I used to be amenable to apologizing and mending our friendship, but I'm done now. When Leah showed us the sonogram, I felt sick to my stomach. With the hope that Sam would change his mind, my family and I had dreaded the day when he would be married and have a child. In particular, Leah struggles to care for herself. Unfortunately, they both damaged their relationships with everyone who could have been of assistance to them. In light of everything that has transpired, my mom and I made an effort to make Dad's birthday last week extra special. Every year, Dad's place of employment hosts a family appreciation day at a nearby amusement park. Sam also works there, but unless we go together, he normally doesn't pay attention to these activities. On his birthday, Sam surprisingly texted Dad to ask if they wanted to do something over the weekend. Dad said Sam would see him closer to the date because he had been working on projects and was taking a week off around his birthday. Sam texted once again on Friday as the weekend drew near, wondering if they might get together. Dad had a little shift on Sunday, and Saturday was the day for family appreciation. Dad didn't want to go alone, so he told Sam they were busy, even though my mom had informed him he could go without her if he so desired. Even if they had been free, I sincerely hoped they wouldn't consent to meet him, so I was relieved when Mom told me about it. "Maybe we'll get back to him about his birthday around Christmas," Mom joked after reassuring me. Even though he lives only 10 minutes away, Sam is notoriously awful at commemorating occasions and providing gifts, and he frequently sends cards much after the customary time. For example, what did he anticipate happening? "After everything, I needed that laugh." As an aside, a commenter brought up the fact that Sam's chokehold was truly a felony, that is, the strangulation of a kid. I was struck with that realization. I never really thought it was a crime because I was so accustomed to his physical outbursts. On that one, he totally avoided the repercussions. Although I believe that too much time has gone, I still want to see whether there is anything I can do legally about it. In any case, hearing about the text conversation with Sam made me chuckle and helped to diffuse the tension. "If Sam is ready to deal with me yet?" a humorous commenter inquired. The irony is that he most likely isn't aware that Saturday was actually scheduled. Since he and Dad share a workplace, Dad might easily learn about Sam's schedule, including that Sunday duty. In any case, Sam will believe that my parents are ignoring him on my behalf and come to the realization that they are not forgiving of him so easily. He might genuinely comprehend the repercussions for the first time. Recently, I had another unsettling thought. What does Sam's violent conduct signify for my future niece or nephew if it hasn't changed? Even after 15 years, the trauma still affects me. Sam has a history of losing control under pressure, getting lethargic, and drinking more. I'm also concerned for their child because Leah can hardly take care of herself. Sam probably wants me to be sympathetic and take on the role of caregiver. But even if I wanted to, I honestly don't know if I could handle that legally. Given how much time has gone by, anxiety makes me question whether the authorities would even consider me seriously. We showed up unannounced, which actually means we came twice a year, both times when we had car issues nearby as Leah has complained about. Her family, meanwhile, frequently visits without any problems. Leah isn't very important to any of us anyway. Not knowing if our dad would survive, she once pulled Sam and me from his hospital bed so we could go to her mom's weekly dinner. She used it as a weapon when Sam actually yelled at her on the way back, accusing him of not giving a damn about her family. Mom finally threw Sam out after he failed to discipline his dog after it hurt her, asking him to get his act together. Although I know my parents truly love me, I find it frustrating that they haven't held him accountable in the past. They were fostering children at the time to help pay for Sam's education tuition and to make ends meet, so they would have lost their license if they had reported him. By that point, Sam was only home during breaks, and fortunately, there were no other children there. Regarding childcare, I no longer have any sympathy for Sam or Leah. Before allowing them to abuse their child or, worse, if Sam ever throws his child on me without asking, I would contact CPS. I no longer consider them family. Let's move on to the next family matter, my brother's wedding. Because of his controlling mother-in-law, there were no children. At this point, Leo, my kid, won't interact with him in any way. My family has always been close-knit and has supported me in raising Leo. I am a 46-year-old single father. Leo's favorite person in the past was my brother Jack. Because Jack and Mary had flexible work hours when Leo was younger, they frequently took him to the zoo, aquarium, or even camping. As my son got older, he began to share my brother's passions for video games, photography and music. Leo informed me he wanted to follow in his uncle's footsteps when he was 9 years old. All of this is to suggest that they were very close. My brother told me last year that he and Mary, his girlfriend, were getting married. When I questioned Jack and his girlfriend about it, they told me it was all Karen's idea, my stepsister's mother, because I knew they didn't think marriage was a good idea. Karen was paying for the wedding, so Jack and Mary didn't give a damn, so they let her organize everything, including the location, the food, the music, etc. Karen made the decision to organize a destination wedding in an upscale hotel. Last July my son and I received the invitation that was sent to us both. If I so desired, I even had a +1. I attempted to book our hotel stay as soon as the wedding website launched. Since the link wasn't working and I didn't want to take the chance of not getting a room, I had to call the hotel. The confirmation email stated room for 2 adults, but I didn't give it much thought because I thought the hotel personnel were having trouble communicating in English. At about the same time, I also purchased our airline tickets. Less than a month before the wedding, in January, my stepsister called me in tears. Karen had chosen the wrong location. It turns out that the resort was exclusively for adults and that children were not permitted. At the time, my kid was 13. They informed me that the entire resort was child-free, so Leo wouldn't even be permitted to attend the ceremony or reception when I asked if we might stay at another hotel. Disappointed, I promised my stepsister that I would discuss it with my kid. She insisted that she and Jack wanted to tell him face to face, even though I knew how thrilled he was about his uncle's wedding. To be honest, my son was heartbroken. When he was informed that he would not be allowed to go, he broke down in tears. He begged them to move the wedding and even offered to donate all of his savings. After half an hour, my brother became irate and told Leo that the day wasn't about him and that he was being self-centered. After a while, Leo apologized and retired to his room. My son ceased communicating with my brother after the wedding. Leo would disregard any messages Jack sent him unless they were important to me. For instance, he couldn't get through to me, so he would only respond if Jack asked him to tell me something. Leo would answer simple queries at family get-togethers, such as "Can you pass the salt?" or "Help grandma with the plates," but he would turn away from Jack and Mary if they attempted to strike up a conversation or inquire about school. To make up for the wedding, Jack and Mary promised to treat Leo to a memorable spring break getaway a month after the wedding. After turning down the invitation, my son informed me that he didn't want to accompany them. I knew he had always wanted to go there, so it was devastating, but he refused to back down. Leo had a similar incident on his birthday. After I told him that I was going to throw him a party, he urged me not to invite his aunt and uncle. He claimed that if they didn't want him on their special day, he didn't want them on his. I attempted to persuade him by reminding him that they were family and that they were sincerely sorry. When I informed my brother that he was not invited, he was devastated. But this past weekend at my mom's place, things reached a breaking point. The topic of Leo's plans for college came up. Leo told my mother that he was no longer interested in going to the same university as Jack and that he had decided to pursue another course of study. "Why would I want to be like your uncle?" my son said in response to my mother's statement that "I thought you wanted to be like your uncle." I stepped in and informed Leo that although he didn't need to be so impolite, the harm had already been done. After hearing what he had to say, my brother and stepsister quickly fled. My brother texted me last night to call me a jerk for letting Leo harbor resentment. He even implied that I wasn't doing anything to improve their connection by accusing me of being envious of it. I explained to him that these were the results of his behavior and that he was solely responsible for letting his future mother-in-law organize the wedding when she obviously didn't take my child into account. He ended the call. My mother and some relatives believe that in order for us to all move on, I should make my kid forgive my brother, saying that it was only a small error and that there was no malice. However, I don't believe I ought to. My kid was obviously harmed, and he should only be given the opportunity to move past his hurt and forgive them when he is ready. Recent update. For a while, we will be avoiding family gatherings. My brother promised to accept Leo's boundaries after we spoke. In addition, he clarified the actual events, and most importantly, Leo is currently doing considerably better. Here is a longer update for those who are interested. I told my mother that until things calmed down and, more importantly, until Leo felt at ease again, we would no longer be going to family events. I believe she finally realized how much Leo had been hurting, even if she was rightfully upset. My mother surprised me by telling me that she was adamant that Leo forgive Jack since he had fallen into a depression. I clarified that pressuring Leo to forgive could end in driving him farther away. When I informed my sister that we would no longer be attending family events, she expressed sadness as well, but she claimed to understand. To ensure that the kids could still spend time together, She recommended that we establish our own weekly ritual. For the past few weeks, that's what we've been doing. Leo spends time at her place one week, then my nieces and nephews visit me the next. Leo seems content with this arrangement, and it appears to be working so far. The fact that he is not under parental pressure to engage with his uncle, in my opinion, is beneficial. I texted my brother the weekend after my post, requesting a meeting and conversation. Mary wasn't there because I told him I wanted to talk to him alone. Jack instantly expressed regret for his actions and words, expressing his regret for both. He supported my presumption that his frequent arguments with Mary had caused him worry. He also said that the arguments had gotten so heated that he had thought about getting a divorce. I may come out as harsh, but I informed him that I only wanted the truth about what had happened and didn't care about that. According to Jack, he was unaware of the child-free location until November. But Mary had known for a long time, perhaps all of it, as many of you suspected. It seems that this all began when Jack and Mary took Leo to the beach a few years ago. My son unintentionally called Jack Dad when they were playing, but he swiftly corrected himself. According to Jack, it was a minor innocuous error, similar to when a toddler unintentionally addresses a teacher as mom. Leo felt ashamed, but Jack dismissed it with a laugh. The problem was that Leo had been overheard by Jack's stepmother, Karen, and her husband Phil, who had accompanied them on that trip. Karen lost out when they got back from their vacation, saying she was triggered by a random kid calling Jack Dad, especially since she knew Mary couldn't have kids. Karen became very poisonous and aggressive toward Mary, demanding among other things, that Leo not be welcomed over when she visited, despite Mary's attempts to clarify that it was only a misunderstanding. At first, Jack and Mary only intended to elope without a celebration when they made the decision to get married. However, Mary was tricked by Karen into allowing her to organize the ideal wedding for her only daughter. Mary gave in because she wanted to maintain harmony and was worn out after years of emotional manipulation. Karen deliberately selected the child-free location and took control of the wedding preparations. Mary found out after the place was reserved, but Karen played the victim when she attempted to protest. According to Mary, she tried to work out a deal with the resort, requesting an exception so the kids could stay at a separate hotel and yet attend the ceremony and reception, but the manager was adamant about the rules. Mary became more and more nervous as the wedding date drew near, and in November she told Jack the truth. My brother claims that Mary's emotional outburst was caused by her mother's persistent bullying and manipulation. And she felt terrible for allowing things to come to this point. Jack informed me that rather than excluding Leo and my sister's kids from the wedding, he would have intervened and called it off if he had known sooner. Canceling was not an option though, as many individuals had already reserved their hotel rooms and flights by that point. Ultimately, I informed my brother that none of this justified their actions, particularly Mary's. A woman in her 40s was arguing with a child. When all Leo wanted to do was offer the $2,000 he had saved so he could attend Jack's special day, she screamed at him and called him selfish. I told Jack that he had disappointed Leo, who admired him and thought of him as a hero. Jack had demonstrated to Leo that Jack valued him more than he did. I also informed him that I would be going low contact myself and that I would continue to support Leo's decision to stop communicating with him. I told Jack that he had already apologized enough when he begged for another chance to apologize to Leo. He had no choice except to wait and see if my kid would ever accept his apology. Despite his seeming sadness, Jack assured me that he would honor our requests and give us some space and time. Regarding my son, I expressed regret for not advocating for him earlier and for making him attend weekly family meetings. I informed him that he was free to choose how he wanted to manage that aspect of the family in the future. Although he was hesitant to stop going, I assured him that I would always be there for him and that I wouldn't be offended by his choice. Leo recommended that we spend more time together, just the two of us, rather than attending weekly family events, which pleased me. He suggested that we partake in some of the things he and my brother used to do. We attended a vintage car exhibition last week, and we're going to see Wicked the following week. It sounds like fun, but I'm not a theatrical person. I also expressed my concern that he had stopped doing the activities he loved and advised him not to give them up because he had a disagreement with a loved one. I clarified that he may still enjoy things alone or with a companion. He acknowledged that he had stopped doing such things out of spite for Jack, even though he truly wanted to. I chose to buy him some games that he had been looking forward to but had refunded following the altercation with my brother as an early Christmas present. Using his PC and my PS5, he even persuaded me to play one of his Final Fantasy games online. Since the last Final Fantasy the game I played was still in 2D. I'll admit that I have no idea what I'm doing, but he seems to like seeing me fail. We would appreciate any advice you may have. For my birthday, We ultimately agreed to travel to his ideal location. I was a little depressed that I wouldn't be celebrating my brother's birthday for the first time in nearly 50 years, but all that matters is that I had my son. Leo is less anxious and happier as a result of family matters. In relation to family, it appears that they are at last honoring our limits, which is a relief. All I can hope for is that my brother can improve his marriage. Even though I don't like what they did, I do want him to be content. Now to the next story, story 2. Mom secretly changed my wedding cake order and doesn't know I found out. What should I do? Original post, September 26, 2023. My fiancé and I get married this fall, and the cake has been a huge point of contention with my mom. Long saga, but the gist is that we wanted a dessert bar or cheesecake instead of a traditional cake. My mom initially insisted on having at least a small cake for just us to cut. We compromised and got quotes. Right before we put a deposit down, she decided that having just a cake for us and not for guests is tacky, so we needed to get a sheet cake to serve as well. We were annoyed because she was the one to suggest it, so we cut our losses and opted to do tiered cheesecake and mini cheesecakes, as we originally wanted. My mom would not let this go for the past 6 months. She then decided to focus on pushing for a groom's cake. My fiancé did not want one. When I told her this, she said it's really only a groom's cake in name and not about what he wants. I told her a firm no, multiple times because she wouldn't give up. That brings us to this week. I got a text yesterday saying she was at the bakery and paid for the order. I got suspicious because I never included her in those communications. I called the bakery today and was told by a very apologetic employee that my mom had added a multi-tiered groom's cake, with different fillings, flowers, the whole kit and caboodle. We still have cheesecake, but I feel like it'll look silly next to what is essentially a wedding cake. My question now is, what do I do? She doesn't know that I know. I'm furious and hurt. Obviously it's just a cake, but it's not really about that now. She went behind my back and crossed multiple boundaries after I told her no. Am I being a bridezilla for not letting her have her traditional wedding cake? Relevant comment. Comment 1. Why should she have a cake at your wedding? If you don't want cake, just change the order back and call it a day. And add a password for all your vendors moving forward so changes can't be made without it. OOP. Everyone I've spoken to has either been in the camp of, well, they're paying for the wedding, or, not her wedding, not her cake. I think that's why I'm torn because yes, they are paying. But changing the order behind my back. I'm more upset about the violation of trust than the actual cake, I think. Comment 2. It is not just a cake, it is a breach of your boundaries and your wishes. Cancel her order, put a password on all your wedding accounts. You are not marrying her. You are marrying your partner. OOP. Exactly. It's the breach of trust that's been the most upsetting. I need to call back tomorrow and see if it's possible to cancel and get a refund, since she paid in full. I suspect she did that intentionally, thinking she was being so clever. Comment 3. Ask the bakery to convert the cake into additional cheesecake and mini cheesecakes. Maybe a smaller groom's cake, that looks nothing like a wedding cake. Do not tell her you did this. When you go to the bakery, have a password put on the order so it cannot be changed after you make the appropriate changes. She thinks she got something over on you. If she does check on it, the password will stop her from making any other changes. If she shows up at the venue with yet another cake, instruct the people at the venue to put it in the back and not bring it out. OOP. Thanks for the advice. Having the cake changed to more cheesecakes is a good idea. Never in a million years did I think I'd have to become like one of the Redditors and password protect my wedding, but here we are. Update, December 30th, 2023, 3 months later. Hello again. A big thank you to everyone who gave advice on my original post. I'm now married and had the best, most relaxing honeymoon with my now husband without any pesky family bothering us. By the time I posted, it was too late to cancel the wedding due to deposits and contracts, so it continued as planned. And to clarify, yes, my parents did pay for the wedding, although my husband and I made it clear several times that we did not expect or need them to pay for everything. No, I don't think paying excuses for my mom's actions. My parents reiterated that it was our wedding and we should do what we wanted. Clearly the cake was the exception to this, though she had previously said to get cheesecake if that's what we wanted. My husband and I got a laugh out of everyone's suggestions for how to handle the cake. Initially, I wanted to go the petty route and surprise my mom by calling the bakery to change the cake design to something she would find tacky that would reflect my husband's hobbies. You know, like a groom's cake should do. After taking a few days to weigh my options, I knew my desire for petty satisfaction would nuke my relationship with my mom, which had truthfully never had this dynamic up until wedding planning. I knew that she absolutely was the one in the wrong and acting like a child. And while I'm the actual child in the relationship, I wanted to be mature and handle this like an adult, if only for my own moral high ground. I communicated with my parents and listed all the reasons why this situation, and others throughout the wedding planning process, was hurtful and completely out of line. Shock of the century to everyone on Reddit, I'm sure. It didn't go well. There was a series of texts I received from my mom that demonstrated she couldn't take accountability or comprehend that I wasn't mad that she ruined my wedding by ordering a cake, but rather that she went behind my back knowing it would surprise and upset me on my wedding day. I attempted multiple times to redirect to the actual issue with little success. We ended the conversation with her apologizing for a cake making my husband and me so upset. This obviously wasn't a genuine apology or the main issue, even if she thought it was. She also agreed to move the groom's cake to a meal we had the day before the wedding, which I was fine with. At this point we were a week out from the wedding and the thought of continuing to press the issue was too much for me to handle with everything else on my plate. I dropped the rope leading up to the wedding so I could refocus on enjoying my wedding as best as I could. I interacted with my mom as little as possible the day of, and our wedding party and coordinator did a fantastic job being a buffer. While I've had some contact with her since, it has dramatically declined so I can get some much needed space. Obviously we'll need to have some tough conversations, but I'm choosing to spend my time with my new husband, and getting back into therapy, first. Weddings, man. They really bring out the crazy in people. Oh, and the cheesecakes were a huge hit BTW. Relevant comments. Mrs. Neville Bardos. I'm glad you had the day you wanted and enjoyed your honeymoon. Unfortunately, although previously this wasn't the dynamic you had with your mother, the fact she refused to see her error and wasn't apologetic. If I were you, I would bear that in mind for the future, i.e. other major events, children, etc., and plan accordingly. OOP. Oh, absolutely. The lack of respecting boundaries, breaking trust for future life events was actually something I pointed out in our conversation. She didn't seem to understand the point I was making, just kept going back to the cake and not the deeper issue. 1 year update. November 3, 2024. I'm back, with a 1 year update on how my mom changed my wedding cake order without me knowing. People have reached out for an update, and coincidentally I've had several friends get engaged who have similar family dynamics as mine. I've shared all of this with them, but I feel the need to blast this out online too. Now that I'm a year out, I can acknowledge that I love my husband and our life together, but having a traditional wedding was a big mistake. When I think back on our wedding day, I am devastated to admit that the few emotions I remember from that day were not how much I love my now husband and excitement over our future together, but anxiety over my mom and whether shit was about to blow up. If you're recently engaged and have difficult family relationships, or aren't completely sold on shelling out a ton of money on a wedding, please let this be yet another loud voice yelling at you. Elope, have a courthouse wedding? Don't invite problematic guests. Do whatever you want to do, but for the love of God avoid that family drama at all costs. I wish I would have stuck to what I originally wanted, eloping somewhere abroad. But alas, I made my decision and have to accept it. What I didn't mention in my initial posts was that my relationship with my mom immediately and irrevocably changed as soon as I became engaged. Even though I knew she could be a lot, I had no idea what I was in for. If I could do it all again, I would have stopped that wedding planning train in its tracks after the first few signs of craziness. The cake was, unsurprisingly, just the last straw of craziness that happened. Greatest hits include, telling literally, and I mean literally, everyone she knew that we were getting engaged, less than 10 minutes after my husband told my parents he planned to propose, upon sharing the proposal photos with her, commenting on how big I looked in the photos, which are, to this day, ruined for me, told a family member, who commented on how beautiful I looked at a pre-wedding event, yeah well she's gained a lot of weight. Tried to crash my first look the day of my wedding and acted hurt that she wasn't invited. Did crash my first look and threw a fit when my wedding coordinator wouldn't let her in. Made the wedding all about how she never had a say in anything and that I was the controlling immature one. We do still have contact today, but it's limited and I am very guarded with what I choose to share. She never genuinely apologized or acknowledged the stress and hurt she caused. Short of some major changes on her part, I don't see that happening. So yeah, the moral of the story is to absolutely soak up the fresh excitement of getting engaged. But seriously, ask yourself if there's anyone in your life who will make wedding planning hell on earth. If you're oh so fortunate to have a character like that, have a plan to handle it, and be prepared to enforce those boundaries. And for the extra crazy families out there, maybe just elope. Additional information from OOP. I see how the wording was misleading and I should have linked the 2 previous posts. The point of this was more so to serve as a cautionary tale to any engaged couples out there who are dealing with a situation like this. Learn from my mistakes. What starts as little complaints drama can quickly snowball and permanently change relationships if you don't nip it in the bud. OOP on how to handle family issues on wedding planning. OOP, fair enough. I've seen so many couples recently who are having issues with family very early on in wedding planning, so I wanted to share how 1 year later, my family relationships are horrible because of one day and it personally wasn't worth it for me. Yes, I regret not handling it earlier on and picking up on those red flags. Hindsight is 20/20 and life can be more complicated than what's on paper. Now to the next story, story 3. I was uninvited from a wedding, left humiliated in the rain, while my boyfriend stayed at the event. Am I overreacting? Original post. Today, my 24M partner and I 24F, let's call him Eric, were invited to the wedding of one of his oldest friends from school. We received our save the date months ago, and the invite was addressed to Eric and Vicky. Our invite stated we were invited for the whole shebang, the service, the breakfast and the evening reception. Our RSVP required both of our dietary requirements for the breakfast, which we replied to ages ago. I thought this was pretty awesome and generous of the bride and groom, as I had never met either of them and Eric was only close with the bride, so it was a very nice gesture. The wedding is a few hours away from where we live and since neither of us drive, I booked train tickets in advance which came to about £60 each return and an Airbnb, which worked out at £90 between us. We don't earn a lot so this is quite a big spend to justify. However, since they had invited us to the whole wedding we thought it would be rude not to go. The bride also specified colors we should wear, so I bought a new outfit since I didn't have anything formal that would be suitable. Not the end of the world, but with Christmas coming up it was a bit difficult and I had to be really frugal all through November to make it work. Total spend was probably double what I would spend monthly on fun stuff like going out for dinner or drinks or new clothes. We got to the service and it was beautiful. The bride looked lovely and it was very emotional. I get nervous at weddings, couldn't say why. And so I hadn't eaten beforehand, figuring the 4-course breakfast would fill me up nicely. After the ceremony, we went straight into the venue to have drinks and sit down at tables. We were towards the back of the line into the venue and so half the congregation had already sat down. We glanced at the seating plan, saw Eric's name and headed over. There was no place setting for me. Eric found his name but there weren't any free seats at the table. Eric sat down, and I asked an usher whether there was a mistake. He didn't know, so he waved over the bride. She and I had never met before, but she seemed friendly. Until she opened her mouth. Oh no, you're not part of the breakfast, the invitation was just for the reception and service. You're welcome to come back later. This was in front of most of the guests who had already sat down, in a big venue, probably 140-ish seats. The usher suggested I go to the pub. Eric didn't know what to do but didn't want to cause a scene, so he stayed put and quiet. I quite literally have never felt so embarrassed and humiliated in my life. I left and it was raining heavily. I hadn't brought an umbrella, since it was an indoor wedding. And being in a rural place, I had to walk about 20 minutes to get anywhere else. The usher had suggested a pub where the other guests are, so I just kept walking, but my shoes were literally ruined and soaked through. As well as being pretty damn cold because it's December and I was dressed for a wedding. I got to the pub to find a handful of merrymakers drinking heavily, at 2 p.m., in wedding clothes, introduced myself kind of awkwardly as they were total strangers, and they were luckily really nice. They invited me to sit with them and tell them about the service. All of them had only been invited to the reception. I asked one of them if I could see their invite, and it was crystal clear that they were evening guests. There was no mention of the service or the breakfast, nor their dietary requirements. I apparently was the only person who was invited, and then uninvited, to the whole do. I sat with them and had some food, because I was starving, but they all started leaving to get ready at about 4 p.m. Being a total stranger, I didn't think it best to ask to come with them, but I had never been to this town before and besides Eric, I didn't know anybody. Since being ejected at 1:30 p.m.-ish, I was expected to just hang until 7:30 p.m. when the reception started. So I left. I felt so unwelcome and unwanted that I just wanted to go home. The evening will start in about half an hour, without me, but I just can't bring myself to attend knowing that half the guests watched me being asked to leave by the bride herself. I traded in my train ticket, which was a return for tomorrow, and now I'm traveling back alone. I texted Eric to tell him, but he didn't respond. I've been holding back tears since I was ejected, 6 hours ago, and I feel completely torn. I don't understand what happened with the invite, whether it was a mistake or whether I was just supposed to know that it was only for Eric, despite being addressed to both of us, despite asking for both of our dietary requirements, despite explicitly stating we were invited to the whole wedding. Part of me feels like I should have gone to the evening reception too, but I'm soaked through, my hair and makeup look awful, My shoes are unwearable. I am barefoot on a really gross floor right now. And I'm freezing. I look like a mess and I feel so stupid. Did I mess up here? I feel like I've just been totally fucked over, and I'm really upset that Eric didn't stand up for me or say anything or leave the breakfast with me, although I think that's less because of malice and more that he's just a bit hopeless when put on the spot. I've never heard of a wedding where you invite a plus one, by name, but then they aren't invited to as much of the wedding as the other half of the couple. Nobody else at the wedding had this happen. I don't see how it can be personal since I've never met any of them before. I'm really upset and can't wrap my head around how weird today has been. If this happened to you, what would you do? TLDR, went to a wedding, got uninvited halfway through. Am I overreacting by being hurt? Edit. So this blew up way more than I expected. Thank you everyone for your words of support, it's really helped and I've gone from a wobbly wet mess to a cackling harpy with my big glass of wine. You guys don't hold back on your opinions and I kinda love it. It's nearly bedtime here, Eric stayed at the party and presumably is still there. I came home and felt a lot better knowing how shitty a situation this was. Karma's a bitch, and when they go low we go high, so I'm going to go to bed and sleep on it and think about next steps in the morning. A lot of people think I should dump Eric, whereas that had never crossed my mind. I was mostly pissed off with the bride and the MOH who may have been involved too, I don't know. Eric will be coming home sometime tomorrow, and we're going to talk. I want to hear his piece because he's been drinking since lunchtime. He might just be a dum-dum rather than a full-blown asshole. Either way, no wind-up sudden decisions right now. I will try to come back and update as and when anything else happens. Thanks everyone. 3 relevant comments. Plain truthiness. The person who messed up was the bride, which is an utter word I don't use but she is, and Eric, who is appalling. I absolutely cannot believe that he didn't walk out with you. What the hell was he thinking? Did he used to date the bride or the bride's sister? Oopie. Funny you say that. The maid of honor is his ex. Although we were not aware until we saw her name in the wedding booklet at the ceremony that she would even be there. However, there is a lot of bad blood between them. If she was going to intervene to remove anybody, it would have been him. Update. Basically, I went to a wedding of my boyfriend's oldest friend from school and got uninvited from the wedding breakfast as it was starting. My boyfriend stayed at the wedding. I hadn't expected the big reaction to my first post, and just want to say thank you to everyone who gave advice and was supportive. I was feeling super shitty when I initially posted, and after an hour of drinking wine and reading your comments I felt a lot more sane and calm. I wanted to clarify a few things that people were confused about or that weren't clear in my first post. I'm in the UK and our weddings are different to the way weddings are held in the US. Traditionally, there is a ceremony, the wedding breakfast, which is a sit-down 3-course meal. Although it's called breakfast, it is usually in the afternoon, followed by speeches, and then an evening reception which is like a disco. It's not uncommon for people to invite only relatives and close friends to the ceremony and breakfast, then invite lots of evening guests for the reception. However, it is uncommon to invite somebody to the ceremony and reception, but not the breakfast, as then they are kind of left to entertain themselves somewhere for 6 hours. Having talked to friends and coworkers since last weekend, what happened to me was a serious no-no in terms of etiquette. Me and Eric have been together for nearly a year and a half, we live together, and we have a pretty strong relationship. He had no past romantic connections with the bride, I'll call her Marie, which some people were asking about. They went to school together from the age of 4, 10, and remained in touch as pen pals, Facebook friends since then. They rarely see each other in person and the wedding was the first time he would see her in about 2 years. There was zero phone signal at the venue. We noticed this when we arrived for the ceremony and were a little annoyed as the wedding had a hashtag which we couldn't exactly tweet about with no signal. This is important later. We didn't know this until we arrived at the wedding, but the maid of honor, Helen, was Eric's ex-girlfriend. They were together for 3 years, and she cheated on him and dumped him. They have a lot of bad blood and do not have any contact with each other. Okay, so on to the update. After leaving the ceremony I got straight on the train and went back to my hometown. I was on the train when I wrote my first post. When I got home, I told my parents everything and they weren't particularly impressed, and like most of the posters here they were perplexed that Eric hadn't come with me. My mum gave me a big hug, ran me a bath and poured me a glass of wine, and I just tried to relax and forget about my day from hell. I still hadn't heard from Eric, but texted him to let him know I was home safe and would see him tomorrow. Eric texted me back at about 9 p.m., asking me what I meant by home or the Airbnb that we had booked nearby to the venue. I clarified, and he said, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Love you so much, X." Didn't really know what to make of it since the whole day had just been such a massive fuck up. So I finished my wine, watched a Disney movie and went to bed. The next morning, given I still hadn't really heard from Eric at all, I assumed he would be getting in at about midday, so I got up early and started wrapping Christmas presents. At 8 a.m. I heard a key in the door and what do you know, it's Eric, still in his crease suit, with red eyes and looking like death. He wasn't really making sense, so I made him have a shower and warm up, made coffee and decided to talk once he was looking human again. We sat down together and pieced together his side of the story. Basically, once I had left, Eric was absolutely livid with Marie. He had frozen like a deer in headlights when she was asking me to go and was kicking himself that he hadn't done the right thing. About 10 minutes after I left, Marie turned around and said, "Oh, actually, a few people haven't turned up. Get Vicky to come back, we have space for her now." And Eric had tried to call me. Because there was no phone signal anywhere near the venue, he couldn't get through, and Marie pretty much immediately said, "Oh well, never mind, she didn't want to be here anyway." Which obviously was a pile of crap, and made Eric feel rubbish. The meal was a very formal, sit-down affair, so he just kind of grinned and bore it, assuming I would be coming back in the evening. Eric was the only person mentioned in the speeches, by Marie's father, who wasn't a family member, and apparently it was clear to everyone how disappointed he was that I wasn't there to share it with him. When I texted him at about 6 p.m. to let him know I was going home, he never received it. He was only able to text me at 9 p.m. by hiking down the road for 5 minutes to find a signal. All the while his ex Helen was being sickly sweet, asking where I was, why didn't I want to come and enjoy the party, was I shy? Apparently with quite the evil glint in her eye, like she had got exactly what she'd wanted. Neither of us knew she was the MOH until we got there. And given their bad relationship, Eric was pretty pissed off that Marie had failed to mention she had such a prominent role in the wedding. Whether Helen was behind the seating error, I don't know, but if she was, then Marie was just as bad in enabling it to happen. So Eric stayed at the wedding, miserably, and went back to the Airbnb afterwards alone. He barely slept, feeling angry at Marie and Helen for fucking with us and at himself for not sticking up for me, and left at 4:30 a.m. to get the first train home, hence why he was back at our place so early. He wasn't really apologetic to me at all, he didn't really seem to see how it was shitty for me. He more felt like he had been insulted by the situation and let down by his oldest friend. He is cutting off Marie and doesn't want anything else to do with her. So, yeah. That was Eric's take on the whole thing. To be honest, I was pretty pissed that in all of this, he hadn't really considered how I felt, or what it had been like for me getting thrown out of the wedding. While what he had gone through was pretty crummy, he at least had been warm, dry and well fed. The indignation of your girlfriend being removed from an event you're at isn't really as bad as being the girlfriend, getting soaked in the rain, feeling humiliated and all the rest. So we talked, and I laid out why I wasn't okay with what had happened and why his reaction wasn't okay. He can be a bit of a lemon sometimes, and this feels like one of those times. He didn't step up to the plate, he just let the world wash over him and acted as a bystander. I'm still hurt by his actions and he still hasn't really apologized properly. I don't know if he understands that he did wrong too. But this isn't a deal breaker for me. It's a heavy straw on the camel's back, but the camel is still standing. We have a really lovely Christmas coming up, and after a really long autumn of working hard, all I want is to go back to the happy place we were before this fuck up, and honestly I don't want to think about it. So, I know a lot of you guys are going to drag me over hot coals for this one, but we're still together. I'm not going to break up with him over this, but it's a big dark mark on his record. As far as I'm concerned, he needs to get a lot of extra credit to get a pass this year, to use a terrible analogy, and I expect him to step up and really try to do better from now on. It's not really an ultimatum, but I'm willing to put this behind us if he can prove to me that he's invested in trying harder in this relationship from now on. If he doesn't, then I won't be sticking around. I love him a lot, but he needs to have my back, and be empathetic to what I'm going through. I'm sorry that this wasn't the victorious breakup update so many of you wanted, but I want a nice happy Christmas together. I'm not ruling it out as an option if things don't improve. But I want to give him another chance to prove this relationship is worth it. TLDR, Eric came home the next day, we talked, we're still together. Top comment. Throw _ the switch. Things to think about. If Marie said only 10 minutes after you left that you could stay, why didn't he come and physically find you after his call didn't go through? If Marie said only 10 minutes after you left that you could stay, why didn't he go and find a signal to call you, 5 minutes away, after his call didn't go through? Why didn't he try and find a signal to call you, again, only 5 minutes away, until 9 p.m.? Relevant comments. It's all mine now. So I know a lot of you guys are going to drag me over hot coals for this one, but we're still together. Yeah, that's the important thing. You haven't lost him. And as for dragging you over coals, you're going to be the one to live with this selfish, conceited carpet, so really there's nothing more I can add that would push the point home more than some more occasions where he just dumps you at the side of the road because he's offended by how they disrespected him by treating you badly. Throw the switches comment makes a good point. He didn't even try to catch you up, go down the road to contact you, or even leave in disgust, because all he could think about was his own hurt feelings. You've got a great life coming. OP. I've set a deadline in my head where I need to see significant improvement in a few areas of the relationship, which I have told him is important if he wants us to stay together, and if that doesn't happen, I'm gone. If he messes up big time before then, I'm gone. Just giving him one last chance to pull himself up by his bootstraps and prove it's worth staying for. Now, on to the next story, story 4. My sister banned me from her wedding, claiming her fiancé has feelings for me. Now he's refusing to marry her over it. Hello everyone, I'm Michelle, 20F, and I would greatly appreciate your feedback. Emily, 25F, is my older sister, and she is expected to marry Jonathan, 25M. Between them, everything appeared to be ideal. We all believed they were meant to be together, and they had been together for years. However, things have just taken a very odd and surprising turn, and now their wedding is in doubt. Why? My sister won't let me go to their wedding, therefore Jonathan has declined to marry her. Furthermore, Emily thinks Jonathan has feelings for me. I understand how crazy that sounds, but allow me to clarify. For background, I don't have a close relationship with either my parents or my sister. I kind of drifted away from them once I started college, but it's not like anything major happened to trigger a fallout. Since I moved out for school, I haven't really spent much time at home. I would usually travel or go to my grandparents' house during spring holidays rather than returning home. Simply said, it seemed like a better alternative than having to cope with the unpleasantness of being at home. The problem is that I'm not at all like my sister or parents. If it makes sense, we've never really clicked. I'm not truly a part of their universe, which is their own. They never seemed to understand me, and to be honest, they never made an effort. They would all bond over something I didn't care about while I was growing up, and it seemed like I was speaking a foreign language anytime I brought up something I was interested in. They would simply listen, nod, then return the conversation to their own interests. So I gave up trying after a time. But here's what hurts the most. They made no attempt to contact me as I began to distance myself from them. They seemed to be quite content with me removing myself from their lives, almost as if they were glad to see me go. To be honest, that hurt. Family members should be aware when one of their own is gradually fading away, but they didn't appear to give a damn. It simply validated my long-held belief that I didn't belong with them. I eventually only went to see them for important occasions like birthdays and holidays. Even so though, I still felt more like a visitor to their lives. I would arrive, take care of the family business and then depart. The dialogue was always courteous but superficial. There was no genuine connection, no warmth. Additionally, Emily and I never shared the strong sisterhood that many siblings do. She has always been the family's golden kid, the one who did everything right, went down the route my parents desired and blended in flawlessly. I was the black sheep, the odd one out. They aren't awful individuals or anything, but the way they discreetly disparage me shows that they may be true bullies. You know how some small remarks can have a profound impact despite appearing innocuous at first glance? Yes, I would get that. I eventually came to the conclusion that it was simply preferable to avoid them as much as possible. Why place yourself in an uncomfortable and out-of-place situation? The problem is that when Jonathan joined us for Christmas dinner last year, I didn't feel totally invisible for the first time in a long time. My family has a way of making me feel as like I'm an outsider in my own house and that I don't belong. I wasn't treated that way by Jonathan though. Instead of treating me like the odd black sheep I often feel around my family, he was actually kind to me and spoke to me like a regular person. I didn't give it much thought at first. It was only basic politeness after all. However, Emily was very troubled by this for some reason. It's not as though Jonathan and I were engaging in a meaningful, private discussion. We simply discussed a variety of topics, including travel, school, amusing incidents at work, and other everyday topics. However, Emily seemed strange about it right away. I tried to ignore the cold stares she kept giving me during supper. That is, until she addressed me directly later that night. I will always remember that. She said, "I know what you're doing," and drew me aside. "You're attempting to take my boyfriend, even though you've always been envious of me." To be honest, I was stunned. Steal her man? I mean? Even so, where did that originate? She refused to let it go even after I told her she was being foolish and laughed it off. She insisted that I was being too nice with Jonathan and that he was acting strangely around me. It was such a crazy charge that I wasn't even sure how to react. Where the hell was this coming from? Being the center of attention has always been Emily's thing. My folks adore her. She's the ideal person. She's their golden child, so I understand. But saying that I attempted to snatch her fiancé. Even for her it was a new low. Like I normally do with her drama, I tried to ignore it. I assumed she was simply being insecure or worried for whatever reason because we're not close anyhow. The problem is that after that night, things became strange amongst us all. I didn't believe Emily could have gotten any farther away. She seemed to be deliberately avoiding me now, even though we were never close in the first place. She would either act as though she couldn't be bothered or give me one-word responses if I tried to speak with her. She would be glued to Jonathan's side during family get-togethers, as if she were claiming her space. It was absurd. Jonathan, however, pretended that nothing had changed. He remained courteous, amiable, and normal in my presence. What truly irritates me, I suppose, is how easily my family seems to agree with Emily. There were subtle clues, but no one ever spoke to me explicitly. Every time Emily and Jonathan were present, my mother would give me these strange stares. My dad, who is generally quite indifferent, began saying more about the value of connections and the necessity of family support. Everything was quite passive-aggressive. My anger increased as I gave it more thought. I've never been the kind to become entangled in the drama of others, much less that of my sister. Why would I suddenly get interested in Emily's fiancé when we almost ever speak outside of family gatherings? It was illogical. My grandparents informed me of Emily's engagement a few months later. Indeed, I was not even informed that my own sister was getting married. Finding out from my grandparents was a stomach punch, even if I wasn't exactly expecting her to send me a personalized invitation with love and glitter or anything at this point. You know, the kind that validates your preconceived notions about your family's lack of concern for you. I suppose I had been clinging to a sliver of hope that, despite the stress and distance, she would still think of me as having been a part of this significant occasion in her life. Hey, we're sisters, right? I thought. We may not be close, but I am still her family. That was obviously too much to ask for, though. When I learned about the engagement, I kept quiet to Emily. I initially assumed that she might have forgotten to tell me or that she was simply preoccupied with wedding preparations. For some reason, I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt. Even though I realize that sounds foolish. I assumed that she would ultimately give me a call or at the very least, send me a last-minute invitation. However, days stretched into weeks, and nothing happened. Crickets. Then I got an unexpected call from Emily. Since we hadn't actually spoken since that strange accusation over Christmas, I must admit that I was taken aback when her name appeared on my phone. I replied, attempting to sound informal, as if my own sister hadn't forgotten me entirely. She broke the news to him after a few awkward minutes of small talk. I'm not inviting you to the wedding. As I tried to take in what she had just said, I became silent for a moment. Even though I wasn't particularly eager to leave or anything, it still hurt to hear her say it aloud. When I asked her why, she gave me the most ridiculous explanation. I don't want you there because Jonathan has feelings for you. It will simply be uncomfortable. I had to laugh, laughed aloud indeed. It was unbelievable to me that this was taking place. To begin with, Jonathan has no affection for me, and even if he did, I wouldn't have stood up during the ceremony to declare my unwavering love for him. I didn't even want to argue because it was all so absurd. I simply hung up after saying, have a great wedding and happy marriage. It didn't really matter to me whether or not I was a part of her special day because I didn't need that turmoil in my life and, to be honest, we weren't close. Emily and I were living in two entirely separate universes, and I had long since accepted this. However, I simply needed to let things out and perhaps gain some external insight. Am I the only one who thinks this whole thing is crazy? Have any of you had a similar situation? I would appreciate any guidance. Update 1. I need to write this all down while it's still fresh in my head since yesterday was completely crazy. Emily's rehearsal dinner descended into total mayhem, and I was somehow pulled into the center of it all. My phone started exploding when I was spending a typical Thursday night cuddled up with my laptop, working on an assignment. I chose to ignore it at first. Lately, I've gotten fairly adept at that. However, in less than 10 minutes, I saw that I had 7 missed calls from my dad. My dad doesn't call more than once now. He's the kind that assumes you're busy if you don't respond right away and will try again later. 7 calls then? There was clearly a problem. He was trembling when I finally answered. He sounded like someone I had never heard before. Michelle, you must visit the location immediately. Like a broken record, he said, right now. He just replied, it's about Jonathan and Emily. When I inquired what was wrong. Just come, please. His voice was so desperate that I was a little alarmed. But here's the thing, did they really think that I would just drop everything and rush to their aid after all of the turmoil, allegations, and exclusion from the wedding? I told him just that. Remember, Dad, I'm not attending this wedding. Emily was rather explicit about that. Michelle, please, he replied. Jonathan is unwilling to hold the wedding without your presence. I was halted in my tracks by that. What? My phone beeped with another call, this time from Mom, before I could comprehend that bomb. She was crying, really crying when I turned over. She kept saying, "Your sister needs you." As if she had forgotten how they had all treated me during the previous few months. Listening to her cry about sisterly love and family loyalty when they had been okay without me until things went wrong was weird. Emily then called in a shambled, hardly comprehensible voice. Jonathan apparently showed up for the rehearsal dinner and asked me right away where I was. He lost it when Emily informed him I wasn't invited, but it was more subdued and disappointed than furious. He declared that he could not marry someone who would treat their own sister in such a manner in front of their friends, the wedding party, and both families. Recounting it, Emily sobbed into the phone. He claimed that after observing their treatment of me, he couldn't be a member of a family that would reject someone in such a way. I was just like Mom and Dad, he stated, adding that he didn't want to be around such poisonous behavior. If I'm being honest, a significant portion of me felt validated. At last, someone had witnessed what I had endured for years. In fact, someone had spoken up and declared that it was unacceptable. Emily wasn't finished though. In between sobbing, she began outlining this intricate plan for me to visit the location and explain that there was only a major misunderstanding and that I was the one who decided not to attend the wedding, claiming that it was entirely my idea. She persisted in repeating, "We can fix this. Simply come and inform Jonathan that you have no intention of attending the wedding. Inform him that you were never left out. Michelle, please. I can't let him go." It was all breathtakingly audacious. It's absurd that after months of me behaving like a man-stealing villain and being told outright that I wasn't allowed to her wedding because her fiancé could be attracted to me. She wanted me to lie in order to keep her connection intact after making me feel like trash in my own family. I let her cry on the other end of the line for a long time without saying anything. Then, as coolly as I could, I said, "I won't lie to you, Emily. You are now dealing with the repercussions of your decisions to ignore me and treat me as though I didn't exist. Fixing it is not my responsibility. But he'll hear you out." She almost let out a scream. "He believes in you." I answered, "Perhaps he trusts me because I've never given him a reason not to. Perhaps he has doubts about your true identity because of anything he perceives in the way you have treated me. In any case, I won't be attending the event and I won't tell lies to improve your reputation." She was still complaining when I hung up. I then made myself a cup of tea, switched off my phone entirely, and took a seat to truly think about what had just transpired. My phone continued to light up with notifications over the course of the following several hours. I examined it and found voicemails from my parents, missed calls from Emily's pals, and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The entire family seemed to have banded together to try to coerce me into cleaning up Emily's mess. But what do you know? For the first time in my life, I was very sure that avoiding them was the proper thing to do. Jonathan alone had been able to see through their actions. Not because of anything I said or did, but because of how they treated me, he had come to that conclusion. And to be honest, that seemed like the fullest confirmation I could have hoped for. Last night, I went to bed without using my phone, and I slept better than I have in months. For once, let them handle the consequences of their own behavior. I'm done cleaning up other people's crap and being the family scapegoat. My grandparents, who are the only relatives I still communicate with, informed me this morning that Jonathan is not returning calls from Emily or my parents. It seems that he has informed his family that the wedding is final. My parents are working feverishly to contain the damage, Emily is inconsolable, and I'm just sitting here, at last content with my choice to keep my distance. I realize this is lengthy, but I had to say it all. I appreciate all of the comments on my previous post that affirmed my choice to keep my distance from my family. You were okay. Sometimes it's best to take a back seat and let others deal with the fallout from their own behavior. Update 2. Many of you inquired about my early years and the reasons behind my prolonged estrangement from my family. Since it's a somewhat weighty story, I didn't delve into it in my first post, but in light of recent events, I believe this is a good moment to explore some of it. The problem is that I suffer from social anxiety. I always had the feeling that something was wrong with me as a child, but I was never able to articulate it. However, my parents were traditionalists who thought mental health conditions were merely pretexts. They would frequently say things like, "You need to toughen up," or "You're just being dramatic." They would label me weak or lazy if I ever showed signs of anxiety or a panic attack, as if I was choosing to feel that way. When I look back, I can see a lot of warning signs. I had this big presentation for English class when I was 15. The thought of standing in front of 30 students was a recipe for a social anxiety disorder. I had trouble sleeping the night before, and I felt physically ill the morning of. I begged to stay at home and informed my parents. My father's reaction? Your nervousness won't cause life to stop. Quit making a huge deal out of everything. I ultimately experienced a severe panic attack in front of the class. My voice began breaking. Some children even started chuckling, and my hands were shaking so much that I was unable to grip my notes. The room seemed to be whirling, but I was unable to go out. Rather than offering consolation, my mother simply remarked, "See, you made it through." All that drama was in vain. Everything was made worse by Emily, who was the ideal sister. She was the student body president, the debate team captain, and pretty much everything else that I couldn't be due to my anxiety. When she had large gatherings of her friends, people would remark that I was the weird sister who never came out of her room. I heard Emily say to her pals once, "Yeah, she's just antisocial. She believes that she is too good to be with anyone." My life changed when I was in college. My first semester was a total meltdown for me. Being away from home, adjusting to new social circumstances, and attempting to balance my anxiety while attending classes became too much to handle. I recall feeling like I was dying while I sat in my dorm room, gasping for air. I was almost dragged to the college counseling center by my roommate, who, bless her, saw something was really wrong. The first person who truly listened to me was Dr. Martinez, whom I met there. She didn't urge me to toughen up or minimize my emotions. Rather, she assisted me in comprehending my condition. Dr. Martinez suggested seeing a psychiatrist for a proper diagnosis after a few sessions. It was like finally giving the monster I'd been battling my entire life a name when I received that diagnosis of social anxiety disorder. It wasn't seeking attention or being dramatic, as my family had always insisted. It was a legitimate ailment, and more significantly, it was treatable. The sessions of treatment opened my eyes. I learned from Dr. Martinez that my family's actions were not only unsupportive but also purposefully damaging. She gave me advice on setting limits, advocating for myself, and identifying harmful behaviors. At that point, I began to intentionally distance myself from my family. What really bothers me, though, is that my parents totally rejected my diagnosis when I tried to explain it to them. "These doctors are just trying to make money by labeling everything a disease," my mother genuinely said. "I was merely using big words to justify my antisocial behavior," Emily added, rolling her eyes. I made one final attempt to explain things to them last Thanksgiving, before all of this wedding turmoil began. I had prepared an entire speech on social anxiety, complete with research and figures. "Michelle, when are you going to stop making excuses and start living in the real world?" My dad interrupted me mid-sentence. I came to the realization that they would never change at that point. They would never make an effort to comprehend. They had an unchangeable perception of me as the challenging kid, the dramatic one, the problem. And what do you know? It was strangely liberating to realize that. It made it easier for me to cease looking for their understanding or acceptance. In retrospect, I can see how this tendency directly contributed to the wedding scenario, my parents' hasty acceptance of Emily's story without even challenging it, and Emily's rapid leap to believe I was stealing her fiancé. It's all a part of their long-held belief that I'm the one who causes difficulty and should be managed. Jonathan saw right through this. He observed how they handled me, how they minimized my emotions, and how they used me as the blame for everything. And he called it out for what it was. Poisonous conduct. In contrast to everyone else in my family's social circle who simply accepted their own version of reality. I suppose I'm attempting to convey that this wedding drama wasn't an isolated incident. The result of years of family dynamics in which I was consistently portrayed as the bad guy, the problem child, and the one who needed to be fixed. Perhaps that's why Jonathan's choice feels so righteous to me. Someone else finally noticed what I've been going through for years. Yes, that is the backstory that many of you requested. It clarifies why I'm not in a rush to make repairs right now. I've spent far too many years attempting to change how my family views me, to get their understanding, and to gain their acceptance. I've finished that. Accepting that certain individuals, even members of your family, will never understand or accept you is sometimes the healthiest thing you can do. Update 3. A month has passed since everything went wrong, and I must now reveal the last portion of this tale. At least now I can say that what began as a wedding drama is really finished, even though it has grown into something I never could have predicted. Emily lost everything when her wedding was called off. My new phone number was somehow obtained by her, and she shared it with everyone she knew. I was suddenly inundated with hundreds of hateful comments from strangers, her acquaintances, and distant family members. Guilt-tripping and downright intimidation were among the threats. The vandalism followed. Classic Emily, who used to do this to girls she detested in high school, was the first to leave eggs in my car. She escalated when that failed to get the desired response. I can't even remember how many times I discovered my mailbox ruined, my car vandalized, or my apartment door covered in offensive notes. She cut all 4 of my car tires and left a threatening note in her distinctive handwriting, which was the last straw. My parents consciously chose to ignore Emily's actions during all of this. Girls will be girls, or you need to be more understanding of your sister's pain, was their standard response to every event. They dismissed it as Emily just wanting to talk, even after I showed them security camera footage of her attempting to break into my flat. However, I was ready because of this incredible Reddit community, especially those who suggested that I install security cameras and record everything. I learned from the attorney you suggested that this constituted criminal harassment and vandalism rather than just family drama. Using witness accounts, video evidence, photos, and hundreds of threatening messages, we created a solid case. Emily ultimately realized she had gone too far when my lawyer provided our evidence along with the cease and desist notice. Her attempted break-in was captured on security tape, which was especially damaging. She attempted to bargain through her own attorney, stating that if I dropped everything, she would cover the damages. However, I declined. This was about accountability and penalties, not money. The court case proceeded quickly and decisively. Emily was accused of attempting to break and enter, criminal harassment and vandalism. She was given a permanent restraining order, required therapy, and a 1-year suspended sentence. Given the deliberate nature of her conduct and the substantial evidence of her increasing behavior, the judge was especially severe. My parents' response to the decision was expected. For destroying your sister's life over a few pranks, they accused me of being callous. In fact, they advised me to just move away if I felt unsafe, after I told them that Emily had repeatedly harassed me, damaged my belongings, and attempted to break into my house. I never intended to speak with them again after that. An out-of-court settlement was reached in the civil litigation. In addition to the damages for emotional distress and lost wages, Emily had to pay for all the harm she had caused. Her campaign of harassment on social media has cost me a number of freelancing businesses. More significantly, the settlement included a non-contact clause that prohibits our parents from serving as middlemen or flying monkeys any longer. According to my lawyer, Emily and my parents' concerns about their reputations played a role in the speedy settlement. It turns out that their concern for the opinions of their country club pals is far greater than their concern for doing the right thing. Normal. Since then, I've relocated to a new apartment in a building that is secure and under constant observation. My social media accounts have been closed down. My contact information has been totally updated, and my clients have been incredibly understanding of the situation. Someone who heard about my situation and was impressed by my handling of it even extended an offer of employment to me. The most unexpected result of it all? For the first time in my life, I feel liberated. The expectations and criticisms of my family are not weighing on me. I am no longer the scapegoat. I'm just Michelle, creating my own life according to my own rules. I'm neither the dramatic nor the challenging child. My life was actually altered by the Reddit community, who helped me through everything. In court, your recommendations on documentation and security precautions were crucial. When I started to doubt myself, your encouraging remarks kept me going, and your accounts of similar situations made me understand I wasn't alone. Remember that sharing DNA does not give someone the right to mistreat you if you're dealing with toxic family members. Walking away and letting them deal with the fallout from their actions is sometimes the healthiest course of action. It's about establishing limits and demanding respect, not about getting even. With therapy, my social anxiety is improving, but it's still there. It turns out that a lot of it was related to the continuous criticism and gaslighting I experienced as a child. Who would have thought that removing poisonous individuals might be such a successful treatment? I will no longer be updated now that this phase of my life is genuinely over. I'm concentrating on my education, profession, and creating a new network of chosen family members for support. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. You gave me the confidence to leave and the strength to advocate for myself. Living well is said to be the best kind of retaliation. The best closure, I would add, is knowing that you have finally advocated for yourself. I'm tired of being used as a scapegoat or victim by others. I've taken control of my life and will never look back. Reddit, thank you for everything and goodbye. Now to the next story 5. A coworker asked me to be her man of honor. I said no and she went nuts, What did I miss? Original post. This happened yesterday and I'm still confused. Yesterday was my first day back to work after being off for 2 weeks. This is kinda important. One of my coworkers had gotten engaged the week before I left. When she announced at work, we all did the congratulations and were happy for her type of things. I thought it was over. So when I left for vacation last, I knew no plans had yet been made. Then yesterday when I went back to work, my boss Kim and best friend Laura said that coworker Claire was looking for me. I asked what was up and they weren't sure, but she was carrying a little gift bag. A few minutes later, Claire found me and asked how my vacation was. I was telling them about it and she cut me off and said she had a very important question to ask. She handed me a little gift bag and asked if I would be her best man of honor for her wedding. I thanked her and told her that typically this would traditionally go to a close female relationship. She responded that there was nothing traditional about her wedding, so it was good. I looked over at Laura and Kim, who were both trying to keep from laughing. I again thanked her and congratulated her and told her that I wasn't interested in being part of her wedding party and that I would be happier being a guest in the audience. I swear when I said this, it was when we watched her entire demeanor change and a switch flipped. She went off saying that I have to be at her wedding and that she doesn't understand why I would say no. I told her that we only knew each other for a short time and that I had no interest in trying to plan parties, dinners, and shopping trips. She told me I needed to think about it and she would get back to me later. I told her to go for it, but my answer will be the same. She walked away and I looked at Kim and Laura and asked what the ever-loving fresh creepy hell was that. Kim started to laugh and said she didn't know. But saying no like I did might have saved me a lot of headaches in the future. Laura made the comment that she went straight to Bridezilla and this was a look into what she was going to be like. Claire came back today, however she went with a different approach and handed me a list of what she wants me to do in her vision of how she sees things. I asked her why she gave me this and she said that as her man of honor these were my responsibilities. I told her again that I was not going to do any of this. She said again that she needs me to do this and how much fun it was going to be. Then she asked, "Haven't you ever wanted to be a part of something special?" I told her I was. I was a nurse. Enter Kim, who could sense that I needed help and told Claire one of her patients needed her help. I told Kim that if this keeps up I might need her help. She said she was already watching it and would intervene if I needed it. What did I miss? We aren't that close. She just transferred down to my unit from a different unit 6 months ago. I had no idea who she was until that point. Laura is saying that she is close in age to me and she might feel that to be enough of a connection. Did I miss something? When we are asked, are we supposed to automatically gush and jump up and down in excitement? Why is saying no a bad thing? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, it seems Kim is useless here. You really need to go over Kim's head and nip this in the bud right now because Claire isn't taking no for an answer. OOP, Kim will help, I know she will. She is just waiting to see what her next step is. I have had to have her help with a work issue before. If I have problems with her the next time we work together, I'll let Kim loose. Could this be some weird way to flirt? It won't work with me. I like dick. LOL, and I have a boyfriend. LOL commenter. I'm not an expert, but isn't this an HR issue now? I mean, isn't that like harassment? OOP, it becomes an issue if I report it. My boss is seeing all of it so far and has said that she is watching the situation and will intervene if it keeps going. I'm off tomorrow, so I won't see her for a couple of days. Commenter. She wants to show off how different and edgy she is by having a man of honor. She may also admire your organizing skills and get it done demeanor and thinks you'll throw her great wedding-related parties. OOP, I'm a bad gay guy friend. I'm organized when it comes to a lot of things. But planning a wedding is something I have never done and really don't want to learn to do. If I were to ever get married, it's midnight under a full moon at the beach with a few friends and a cookout the next day. LOL commenter. Okay, this is going to sound weird, but since she's advertising that it's a non-traditional wedding, is it possible she's after you for a specific reason? Are you gay or part of a racial minority? It's possible she wants her wedding to look super diverse for Instagram reasons and maybe she's after you for a specific vibe in the pictures. Regardless of the reason, NTA. OOP. I don't know her background. Yes, I am gay and the entire department knows it because I was dating a former nurse and we broke up. Now I'm dating someone from a different department and it's all known. All she said was it was a less than traditional wedding and it would be okay. Yesterday K&L asked if I was afraid of something about it. Maybe if I had to wear a dress. I said I would fucking rock the dress. I might need a push-up to fill out the front of a dress if it's strapless. LOL, but I just don't want anything to do with it. I have no interest. My life is crazy enough right now. Planning a wedding would go from crazy to insane. Update 1. Hey everyone. First I apologize. I never thought this was going to go as crazy as it did. I want all of you to know I read all of your responses and responded to as many as I was able to. Thank you all for your amazing insights and comments. Many that made me laugh, which I needed. I have been sick and that really helped to cheer me up. I had to meet with my lawyer today regarding family issues. Editor's note, OOP goes into detail about those issues in other posts on his profile, but they weren't relevant here, so I didn't include them. My neighbor, best friend, co-worker Laura took me. I really felt awful and driving wasn't a good idea. We were talking about this on the way and we both were asking a lot of the same questions that all you were asking. The big one was that we were asking about the circumstances of her transfer. She went from Med-Surg 4W to the ER. That is a huge change. I have to work tomorrow so we will see what happens. But Laura and I are going to ask him about the transfer and raise a couple of other concerns. After I got home from the meeting with my lawyer I slept for the rest of the day. Many of you asked about if Claire and I hang out outside of work. The answer is no. I really don't know anything about her. I have helped her a few times with patients and different things, but our relationship is 100% purely work-related. That was why I was so surprised that she asked me to do this. That is why I was so surprised that she asked me about being the man of honor. I have a very small friend base and in all honesty I like to keep it that way. I really have no interest in being a part of this. I'm not a wedding person. After reading so many bridezilla stories and hearing about over-the-top weddings, they have become a huge turnoff to me, spending tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars with insane unrealistic demands that turn people against each other. Why? I would rather use that money and spend that time planning my next trip or vacation. Many people said that I was being used as a token or prop in a wedding. Or a gay best friend. I never really thought about it. I admit that I'm out and proud, but I'm not going to just pretend to be someone's friend just so they can fulfill some kind of fetish they have for wanting to have a gay best friend or some kind of status she feels the need to fulfill. It takes me a lot to get offended, but if this were actually the case then I would really be rather offended. I was not put on the face of the earth to be someone's play toy. A lot of people have said that maybe she doesn't have a boyfriend. She does. She has brought him in before. If she has any insecurity I don't understand it. She is attractive, smart and knows her stuff. So I'm at a loss as to why she is acting like this. A lot of people say go to HR. I'm starting that process with my boss Kim. She is completely aware of the situation being with us when all this happens. She has told me that she is watching the situation and will jump in if I need her to. I trust her completely. While Kim and HR can control the situation from the hospital, they can't control the situation from a personal level if she were to maybe follow me home or a situation like that. So I think that covers it all. I wish I could say this is over. But most likely there is more to come. Please update me. Comments. Commenter. About that name. OOP's username. You're not just an RN, because there's nothing just about RNs, or other nurses. You folks, regardless of gender, do the medical heavy lifting, and when we can't get a straight, sorry, answer from the oh-so-busy MDs, the nurses provide the no-shit information. OOP. My name is kind of an ongoing running inside joke. I'm told at least once a day or so from a patient that I'm just a nurse. One day I heard it 3 times. I don't really take offense to this. And in a joking way I repeated what the patient said and my boss Kim jumped my case about. That's not the case at all. I love my job. It's a huge part of me and who I am. It's a part of my identity. Commenter. I'm curious about her list of demands or responsibilities. Like, did she really think you would change your mind now that you had all this BS work to do and money to spend? OP, it pretty much had me planning the whole thing. She wanted me to plan the bridal shower, the bachelorette party, coordinate dress shopping and fittings, make sure everyone was having fun with the whole thing. Just to name a few. Commenter, OP. What the ever-loving fresh creepy hell is this? LMAO oop. I had no idea what the ever-loving fresh creepy bell was from something. It's just something I have always said. Mini update in comments. Next day. I'll be posting an update in a day or two. Things came to a head today and it was pretty much just as everyone was saying. I need to take some time to understand everything that happened today. I also have a meeting scheduled Monday with the director of nursing at my hospital which should bring closure. I hope so. Update post. This intro is going to be long, but I'm telling you about this for a reason and later in this update, it will make sense. I'm hoping this will be done and that this will be the last of this whole situation. I was born into a family where I was referred to as an issue that needed to be dealt with. I lived in the shadows of my sister who was the child my parents wanted. They wanted one child which was a girl. That way dad had his daddy girl and mom had mommy little princess. Then I came along. Keep in mind that I'm 23, so back then my parents had options but chose to not use any of those options. So instead my parents raised my sister and I was raised by a nanny who even to this day is one of the biggest influences in my life, and I am so grateful for her. She helped me so much. I finally realized that all these years later that by being referred to as an issue that needed to be dealt with, that they stripped me of my humanity and individuality and self-worth as a person. I think that's why I have worked so hard to establish myself in my career and in my life. As a way to become a person again and not just be that issue that needed to be dealt with. This past Thursday things came to a head with the bridezilla known as Claire, and the truth came out. My best friend Laura has been sticking close to me when we worked together if Claire was to start something. We weren't sure if she was going to leave it alone or start up again. I was really hoping that it was done. But she had to try once again. I've been sick and I had a busy morning, so I really just wanted a few minutes to go to the bathroom, grab a quick snack and maybe breathe. Claire came up and had her list and asked if I had a few minutes to talk about the wedding planning. I looked at her and told her again that I was not interested in being part of her wedding and that I was not going to help in any way, and she needed to drop the subject and leave me alone. Again she went into the whole thing of how I was going to do this and how much fun it was going to be. Here we go with that line all of you loved the first time. Why in the ever-loving fresh creepy hell is it so important for me to be your man of honor? I'm not interested and I'm not doing it. It is as exactly as pretty much all of you told me it would be. She was just planning on using me as a token or a play toy. She took all of the fucked up gay stereotypes that are out in society and put them into one sentence. What modern liberal woman isn't going to have a gay bestie on her arm for special events? I felt everything in my stomach move and a wave of nausea came over me and I felt like I couldn't get to the bathroom fast enough. This pissed Laura off to no end. Laura is really kinda like the overprotective sister that I wish I would have had, and took Claire off to visit our boss Kim and laid it all out. Everything that was said. While I wasn't in on that conversation, Laura and Kim filled me in on what was said. Kim came to check on me and I was still hiding in the bathroom. She knocked on the door and asked if she could come in. I asked her for a bottle of water first. While I was waiting I realized two things. I realized why I chose to not hang out with her and why I didn't like her. I couldn't figure out why I didn't like her, just that there was something that gave me the heebie-jeebies. But I realized that I didn't like her because she is a different version of my sister. While Claire is educated and employed, she doesn't care about other people and their feelings. She is like my sister in the sense that if she wants something bad enough she will figure out how to get it. The second thing I realized was that she did exactly what my parents did to me. She completely dehumanized me and reduced me to an entity. Just kinda turned me into a token or a thing for her. I think the word that best describes it is I must be a play toy. What really gets me is that just like my sister Claire doesn't think she did anything wrong and I'm being too sensitive and a delicate snowflake. The next day an emergency meeting was held at work and Claire is being suspended pending investigation and a new transfer is being looked into. Kim made the request for her to be terminated. The director of emergency nursing said this was a last resort, but she was going to be looking into options which could be sending her to a new hospital or facility. This didn't go over well with me. I asked what would happen if she did the exact same thing to someone different. She didn't really give me an answer. But she said she still needs to look into a few things and at this point she is suspended. Anyway. Here it is. I'm still pretty sick and had to work this weekend. If I can, I'll respond. I want to thank everyone for all the amazing support. I am going back to my lawyer to see if he can figure out how to send her a cease and desist letter to make sure she doesn't contact me. I'm heading to bed. Have a good night. Edit. I keep forgetting to thank my boyfriend. He has been with me on this but more in the background. First when we were laughing about it. But when everything Thursday happened he was there as well. Elle was able to get him away from his unit for a little bit for the OK boyfriend hug. He stayed the night with me a couple of nights as well, also helping with me being sick. So yeah. I'm very lucky to have such great support. OOP's comments. Commenter. What if she targets a vulnerable gay patient next? She's a danger and a liability for your employers to be sued. OOP. Thank you for this response. I just texted Kim and asked her about this. She said she was trying to get her fired. And she is hoping this will help the purpose. Now to the next story 6. The son's behavior is starting to creep me out, but I'm not sure if it's actually inappropriate or just a cultural difference. Original post. Hey there, using a throwaway just in case. So I'm from the US and recently moved to Italy to be a nanny. I feel this is important because so far I have not been able to tell if I'm struggling with a cultural difference here in Italy or if I actually have reason to be weirded out. It is easy to tell that the son, Dario, is in middle school, as he is already several inches taller than me and his mom, and has maybe 30 pounds on me. When I first got here, some of the stuff that freaked me out a little I could handle, and I chalked it up to being an Italy thing. This includes stuff like talking almost exclusively in a baby voice when addressing his parents, calling his parents mommy and daddy, fighting physically with his little sister over who gets to sit on mom and dad's lap multiple times throughout the day, fighting with the sister over who gets to sleep with the parents, getting extremely upset when mom or dad leaves for the day, and whining about not getting enough kisses or time laying in bed kissing with mom, and having his parents blow on chewed food in his mouth because it's too hot. Now I really don't want to be critical of this if it's normal here, you know? But in the US I seriously can't imagine a single 7th grade boy engaging in any of these behaviors, so it's really new to me. And really it hadn't affected me, so I just let it be. The problem is though that now I'm starting to get involved and it's making me really uncomfortable. For example, our rooms have adjacent windows which allows the kids to see into my entire room at all times. To me, this is pretty inappropriate. What am I supposed to do when I need to change clothes? But I also don't want to seem like I am sexualizing children or accusing them of anything, so I just politely asked for curtains and took to changing in the bathroom. After weeks without curtains, the family finally promised me that someone was coming to put them up. Well, he only put them in the kids' room. Ever since then I find Dario peeping through the curtains at me multiple times a day. Now I'm sure he is just checking on me, or curious about what I'm up to, but it makes me so uncomfortable. I didn't want to tell the family though because I'm afraid they would think I was accusing their baby of trying to spy on me changing, so I just took matters into my own hands and hung a blanket up over my window. Another issue has been when we stay at the kids' grandparents' house. There's a room for the parents, with a bed for one child, and a room for me with a bed for one child. I figured we would split up boys and girls, and I would stay with the daughter, but nighttime rolls around and Dario is crawling into the bed next to mine. I was so uncomfortable I could hardly sleep. I have talked to my friends at home about this and they all think it's really weird, because we aren't related and he's a teenager now. But this is of course an American opinion. So I can't tell for sure if we're imposing our ideas on this family. Again, if this is really a cultural thing though, I don't know how to tell the family that where I'm from, it's kind of inappropriate for a boy so old to be sleeping next to me, especially when he's been spying on me lately, without causing issues. Of course these behaviors affect other aspects of our life as well, as it is hard to get Dario to do anything because he usually claims it's too hard to do. Making a bed at 13? Too hard? Are you kidding? And I often find myself wanting to tell him to grow up. What I need help with is knowing whether he does need to grow up or if all this behavior is normal here and I'm the crazy American that needs to adjust. Is this behavior normal for a 12-year-old, or is it immature? I feel like the parents still really see him as a young child, and usually he acts like it. But for the most part it seems like he plays up the baby act because he knows it makes his parents cater to him more. If this all is abnormal, does anyone have any suggestions about how to bring this up to the family? Edit. Just want to clarify that at the grandparents' house there are 2 beds, and they are next to each other. Dario was not in my bed but in the bed next to mine. TLDR, I am a nanny for a boy, 13M, whose behavior makes me uncomfortable. I'm not sure if he is actually being inappropriate or if there is just a large cultural difference between my home country and this country. Relevant comments. The freaky. It's normal behavior for a spoiled 13-year-old. Of course most adolescents would want to peek at you through the curtains. The problem is the parents, they have to stop that shit right now. Don't you have authority as a nanny to scold him? I'm Spanish, we have a very similar culture to Italy, and that shit is inappropriate. The parents are educating a horrible child that will grow up to be an asshole that thinks the world should cater to him. Oop, oh my goodness, the relief I am feeling right now to know that this isn't normal. So far I have not particularly felt like I have much authority because the times I would scold him, the parents are sitting right there and how can I reprimand him in front of his own parents? I didn't include this in the post but he is already showing major signs of being an asshole. He's always so rude, critical, and ungrateful. Every meal I make he has something to insult about it. He treats his little sister like shit even though she is a doll and often acts more mature than him, and he loves ordering me around and telling me what I'm doing wrong. It drives me up the wall. B186. We've established this kid's behavior is weird. But WTF at the parents responding to your request for privacy/curtains by giving them to the child. OOP, I have no clue. They've been really weird about some stuff. Like, this is TMI. But the mom knew I was on my period because I had to ask her where to buy tampons here and we got to the house and there's no trash can in the bathroom or in my room. I asked for one multiple times and she said she would get one and never did, and when I asked last she said, Well, the kids have a trash can in their room if you need it. Like WTF, are you not an adult woman? Do you not understand how this works? Do the parents discipline the kids? I asked about discipline when I interviewed and they said they don't really have to discipline the kids. I should have taken it as a warning sign. Honestly, the mom is very strict about some stuff, so they're very good in certain areas that she deems important. Etiquette, cleanliness. But when Dario picks on the daughter, they just let the kids yell and scream and cry until I step in. They also seem to encourage many of Dario's rude comments because technically he does word them politely. For example, I will bust my ass making a meal for the whole family. To be kind and helpful, it is not in my job description. And Dario will eat 4 plates of it and then say, "I'm sorry, but why would you cook this like that?" And I'll say, "That's how we cook it in the US. And he'll say, "Well, I didn't like it. The Italian way is much better." And then put his plate on mine for me to take it to the kitchen and leave. No thanks for cooking. No, but I did like this part. Just insult. Clean my plate, bye. He loves to criticize. Is the child autistic? I thought about the autism initially, but I'm fairly certain it isn't that, because when his parents are gone, the baby act completely turns off and he acts like any other teenager, albeit manipulative and critical, I have ever known. And I have worked in childcare, in the classroom, and as a coach for years now. Update. Hi all, I'm back. Yeesh, how long has it been? 3-4 months later with an update. Long story short, I quit. Here's the long version for those interested. The curtain issue. Like I said in my last post, I had just hung a blanket for privacy, and since then there have been no peeping issues. I asked 2 more times for curtains and was reassured both times that the curtain man would come to hang them in my room. He did come back once and hung more curtains in the kids' room, but again not in mine. Then I was told that they didn't like him and would be finding another curtain guy to hang my curtains. It's been 4 months, no more mention of it, I still use the blanket. The vacation issue. I have simply refused to go on vacation with them. I'm off on weekends and I've reached a point where I just refuse to be home for the entire weekend and manage not to see them from Friday night until Monday morning if I can help it. I go on weekend trips, crash on couches, sneak into my room when they're eating. Things like that just to avoid seeing anyone on my days off. The Dario issue. Dario still acts extremely immaturely. I've warmed up to him a lot, and I've figured out how to cut his rudeness and such. He's become a lot more positive and kind, especially because his mom has been gone a lot and he's with me every day. I'm very upbeat and have worked really hard to get him to socialize and speak kindly. Unfortunately, he seems to have almost regressed in terms of his childish behavior. He still sits on laps, kisses a lot, and sleeps with a parent when the other is gone. The baby talk is constant. Constant. For example, he loves to repeat back butchered syllables of words, if that makes sense. Like his dad will say, "Pasami un cuchillo." Pass me a spoon, and he will clap and exclaim, "Ayo," or "Voy del agua?" Do you want water? And he'll go "Qua qua." He also has started eating kind of like a baby too. Like he'll take the remaining tomato sauce that we used on pasta and use the giant spoon to drink it out of the pot and get it all over his face, and then suck on each of his fingers. But when I look at his parents, they're looking at him like when you see a cute baby trying to use a fork and getting food on his face. But he's 13, so it's honestly sickening to watch and listen to. He won't lock the door when he goes to the bathroom or showers. Why? I started locking the door when I was like 7. And he even cried the other day when his sister sat on the foot of his bed. He doesn't like things touching his bed. And guess what? The parents got mad at the daughter, said it was her fault for baiting him, she just had to tie her shoe for a second, and declared that it's her fault. Dario will be upset all night. He also hasn't made any progress with friends and has taken to playing League of Legends, so he won't leave his room or do any activities or lessons with me or the sister. It's pretty sad, honestly. Basically, the hardest part of this whole thing has been the mother. I won't even go into it here, but she's honestly clinically insane, and I feel so bad for all the people in this house that have to put up with her. She's just a power-hungry, jealous, bitter woman who needs to see a professional. Basically, I went home for Christmas to be with my friends and family and realized how bad this experience was for my health. I was going out drinking almost every night to escape the house. I was sleeping horribly because I knew she was here and her presence gave me awful anxiety. I was getting yelled at every day even when I did nothing wrong. I was at home in the States and the thought of going back made me absolutely miserable. So when I came back, I told them I needed to go back early for medical reasons. Not totally untrue, and now I'm set to leave the last week of March. They've found a new girl. Look out for her post here sometime in the future. TLDR, Dario is still acting like a baby, the mom is still crazy, and I fucking quit. Homies, get me out of here. Now to the next story. 7. My boyfriend won't ask for my hand, and now my dad is staging a family boycott of our wedding. Is my boyfriend being selfish? Original post. I've been with my boyfriend, M25, for 3 years. We both just finished school, and are finally ready for marriage. He proposed last week and I happily said yes. I could not be happier. I love him and he is going to be an awesome dad someday, but my BF is in a very new school and my dad is kind of old school. My dad was beyond mad that my boyfriend did not ask my dad for my hand before proposing. My dad said he was willing to hear my boyfriend's apology if my boyfriend formally asks for my hand at a dinner that my dad said he will pay for at the restaurant of my boyfriend's choosing. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. He will bring my boyfriend's favorite wine to celebrate. I spoke to my boyfriend last night and he won't budge. He doesn't believe in that tradition. My boyfriend showed me an article online where a Pakistani woman was stoned to death outside a courthouse because she married a man against her family's wishes. This just happened. My boyfriend, who witnessed his father be abusive/possessive with his mom as a child, has always felt strongly that women are not property. He thinks the tradition of asking for her hand is repulsive. His point is that he's met my whole family and gotten to know them. He says they have always known his intentions and he never made it secret that he was in love with me and wanted to marry me and have children. He feels he was done enough to announce his intentions and all of them seem to approve of him. He says that at this point he only needs my approval to marry him and nobody else's. So yesterday my mom told me that my dad, who is not even speaking to me because I won't set my foot down with my boyfriend, is calling the whole family and telling them to not attend my wedding. My mom says that my boyfriend is the one treating me like property by not letting me have a say in his decision to not observe a tradition that my 2 older sisters' husbands observed. I told my mother that I understand where my boyfriend is coming from and that I have decided to do away with the tradition of him asking for my hand. So my mother is obviously mad and said that I should be ready for serious consequences. I asked her what and she would not say. But from talking to my sister, she said that they would blackball us from all family gatherings. My 2 sisters and my mom have told me my boyfriend is being selfish. The wedding is set for August 9th. I'm worried that nobody in my family will attend my wedding. Edit. I'm getting some comments about my boyfriend asking for my parents' blessing instead of permission, or hand. I just can't see the difference. There might be one but I don't see it. Is there a big difference? TL.dr. My boyfriend won't ask my dad for my hand in marriage and my parents is having my family boycott my wedding and threatening other consequences. Relevant comments. Oopie, thanks for the congrats and comments. I was just thinking as I read some comments here. One comment said that my parents should not have staged the boycott either way. So maybe the boycott signals something more than just my father wanting to be included in some way. I don't know. I'm now worried that the boycott and calling all my relatives signals more controlling issues that my dad has that I never noticed before. My 2 older sisters had no problems with their wedding because they did everything the way my dad liked. So I'm scared now that maybe my boyfriend is right that it's not just a tradition. Deleted. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. No, both he and your mother are being controlling. And they are attempting to make you choose between your fiancé and them. Choose your fiancé, otherwise you're setting precedent for this type of behavior interference for the rest of your marriage. OOP, this is what I'm afraid of. My fiancé and I don't practice Catholic religion like my family does. So I wonder what will happen when my kids aren't baptized and all that. Pastanazgul. You two need to have a discussion about how the children will be raised religion-wise now, before you have the child. Just advice from someone who learned the hard way. OOP, we did. We don't want religion in our children's lives. We decided that education is going to be the focus and they will make their own minds up about religion once they are educated adults. I grew up Catholic but I don't want that for my kids. My husband grew up somewhat Christian and he still believes in God but he doesn't want religion to be a part of our family either. We have talked about this subject to death. You're right, it's very important. I realize we might change our minds later, who knows. But my family doesn't know about this. I have a feeling after this boycott that my parents will stage another one when they find out we won't be Catholic. Update. The wedding went on as planned. My parents stuck to their guns and boycotted. One of my 2 sisters attended and is now happily blacklisted from our family. Nobody else from my entire family showed up, including my 2 brothers. The wedding was a little unconventional. My sister walked my husband down the aisle and then his sister walked me down the aisle. I wanted this because my SIL actually introduced us and helped me get my first date with him. There was no question about who gives away the bride or even about objections. It was normal other than that. There has been no contact between me and my family, other than my one sister. My mother has made it a point to send me a card every time that they have a family gathering for holidays, or birthdays at their house to let me know that my father says I'm not invited. I get one almost every month. I don't even read them anymore, I just toss them. I don't why they keep sending them because I've made no effort to contact them and I live over 3 hours away, so it's not like I will run into them by accident. The reason I came back to post this here is because some people here made a prediction that came true, that they would come crawling back when we had children. I am now expecting our first child, a girl. She will be the first grandchild for my parents. My parents found out about the pregnancy a few months ago through a family friend. They didn't waste any time in making demands, not request demands. My boyfriend and I are not religious, but I had a Catholic upbringing. I don't practice at all by choice. My mother called me back in April telling me that my father wanted our daughter's middle name to be his mother's first name. I said no. My father was listening in on the speaker, so I went ahead and told them that they were officially uninvited from all birthdays, graduations, and any other important dates in her life. My father called me half an hour later crying and begging me to come stay with them for the birth so my mother could care for me. I said no. He also said that he had already made arrangements for his priest to baptize her at his church, but that I needed to agree to naming her after his mother if I wanted this to happen. He said he'd already planned a big celebration for the birth and the baptism that he was paying for. I said no to all of it. He went from meekly trying to sweet-talk me to raising his voice at me, and I hung up. He called a couple of more times to apologize for losing his temper and again begged me to reconsider giving birth at a hospital near them so they could visit us. He denied having any knowledge of my mother sending me cards to uninvite us to any family functions, and even said that he specifically asked her to invite us, but he was told I declined every time. He lets my mom do the dirty work so he can later hide behind her and deny he had any knowledge. He's done this since I was a little girl. He does this every time he wants to drop the hammer on somebody but be a good cop also. He'll never change. He denied having any knowledge of why anybody in the family missed my wedding. I told him our daughter would not be baptized, or Catholic at all, no offense to Catholics. I told him he was too manipulative and controlling and I didn't want my daughter exposed to that. He's too toxic and just venomous. Coincidentally, the day and for several days after that phone call I got tons of calls and emails from my brothers, their wives, my sister and all my aunts. They all wanted to apologize for missing my wedding, and all had specific excuses, and wanted to make plans to be there for my daughter's birth. I banned them all from her life until she's old enough to decide for herself to let them in. My husband was a little surprised and not sure about banning everybody forever. He's more leaning towards supervised visits if they want to drive to us. My dad has been calling him like crazy, but we are a united front. My husband is deferring to me but giving me ideas as to how I can give a little if I decide to. But with my family there's no giving a little. They want it all. For now, they're all banned. I will reconsider when the youngest of our children turns 18. For now my dad will have to settle for sucking up to my husband while I stick to my guns. Unlike him, I don't mind owning my decisions even if it means I'm a bad cop. I'm not ready to give up a relatively drama-free, stress-free life to allow my dad and all his sheep back into our lives. TL Doctor, nobody in my family showed up to our wedding other than one of my sisters. Everyone is banned from our lives. Relevant comments, downvoted commenter. He should have just done such a small task and asked, like to make peace, geez, I mean really pushing your family away for such a stupid reason. On their side and yours. OP, but that's the thing. After that one small task they would want to name my daughter, another small task, then they would ask I go have the baby near them, another small task, then have her baptized by their priest, then they pick her school, then they make life decisions for her like they tried with me and my siblings, all small tasks. OP replying to a downvoted comment that things have gone too far and to make amends for their daughter. I guess I would tell you that not everything fits in the oversimplification in your comment. My daughter will be better off without a full family of manipulative, controlling and abusive people, or people who condone such behavior. After years of abuse I was glad my husband decided my dad's demand that he ask permission to marry me was too antiquated. The original conflict that caused this rift was years of abuse and manipulation. I chose to burn bridges that needed to go. Otherwise I would never be free to make my own decisions about my own life without consulting with my dad at every turn. Now to the next story. 8. Parents accused me of an affair with my brother-in-law, threw me out, and tried to destroy my career. The shocking truth uncovered. Over the past 6 years, I have established a prosperous career as a senior programmer at a large software business. My parents insist on family values and sticking together, so even though I make more than enough money to live on my own in a wonderful apartment, I've been living with them. Although they have always been domineering, I persuaded myself that it was simply their expression of affection. The environment in our home has always been complicated. This is also where my sister Emily, 32F, and her husband James, 34M reside. 3 years ago, James obtained a job close by, and our parents were overjoyed, so they moved back. With her ideal life, marriage, and grades, Emily has always been the golden child. The comparison began in our early years and has continued ever since. I love my sister, don't get me wrong, but sharing a home has been difficult. Since I work from home the majority of the time, my folks are always watching me. They keep an eye on who I speak to on video conversations, when I start work, and when I take breaks. They have persuaded themselves that this degree of engagement in my life is both required and typical. Even though my precise schedule is shown on the refrigerator, my mother frequently interrupts me in my home office during crucial meetings, saying she forgot I was working. Michael, my 29-year-old lover, lives across the nation. He has been tremendously supportive over our 3 years of long-distance dating. But he and our relationship were never accepted by my parents. They treat James as the son they never had and compare him to him all the time. They attack every aspect of Michael, including his choice to live on the West Coast, his work as a software engineer, ironically, the same field as myself, and even his attire when we video chat. James has always been cordial, not only as his wife's sibling but also as a little sister. We had a good relationship and I valued having someone who didn't criticize me all the time. He frequently defended me during family dinners when my parents began their routine comments about my life choices, as if he understood the burden I was under. Up until 2 weeks ago, everything was in control. With solemn faces, my parents summoned me into the living room. I was managing a group of developers on a significant software update during a pivotal project phase, so the timing couldn't have been worse. On my laptop, they said, they discovered offensive text that purportedly demonstrated my attempt to conduct an affair with James. I was caught completely off guard. The messages they displayed to me were obviously fake and completely out of context. Some appeared to be completely made up, while others were excerpts from business exchanges that had been altered to appear suggestive. I attempted to explain that I'm really in love with Michael and that James is like a brother to me, so I would never do anything like that. They wouldn't look, even when I promised to show them my actual message history. They refused to pay attention. I've always envied Emily's happiness, my mother said, sobbing. And she should have anticipated this because of my rebellious nature. I was a disgrace to the family, according to my enraged father. In the midst of the largest project of my career, they gave me a 24-hour notice to leave the house, a 24-hour notice to pack up my entire existence. I called my grandparents in tears and desperation. They have always been my refuge and our family's sane voice. They immediately believed me after I showed them the actual mails and gave them all the details. They took me in, provided me with housing, and helped me get through this ordeal. In order for me to continue working, my grandfather even assisted me in setting up a makeshift home office in their spare room. My father was furious to learn that I was staying with them. When I wasn't there, he actually came to their house and yelled at them for enabling me and undermining his authority. My father became even more irate when my grandfather refused to back down and stood up for me. Declaring he would never talk to them again, he stormed away. I was devastated to see my grandfather, who is normally composed, trembling with rage following that altercation. When my father began getting in touch with my place of employment, things got worse. He made outrageous charges about my inappropriate behavior and unstable mental state in emails he sent to my manager and the Human Resources Department. He even made an attempt to persuade them that I was giving competitors access to company secrets. Fortunately, my manager has been understanding and my work history speaks for itself. However, the strain is having an adverse effect. It has been embarrassing for me to have to explain these private matters to my staff. Then my granddad unexpectedly died yesterday. The agony is intolerable. He was more than simply my grandfather. He was also my confidant, my guardian, and the one who always had faith in me. The fact that my parents did not attend the funeral only makes it worse. They had left town. Later, when I was organizing my grandfather's funeral, I discovered through my cousin that they were actually on vacation, sharing photos from a beach resort on Facebook. Every happy picture they shared made my heart ache. Taking an emergency leave of absence from his job, Michael flew in to support me during this trying period. My parents appeared out of nowhere as soon as he got to my grandparents' house. As though Michael's presence was somehow improper, my father icily inquired as to why he was there. I eventually lost my temper at that point. I asked them who they believed had taken care of all the funeral planning, who had supported Grandma during her most trying time, who had stayed up late planning the ceremony, calling family, and interacting with the funeral home while they were taking selfies on the beach. Then, in an unsettling development, my father's entire personality altered. A disturbing peace took the place of the rage in his eyes. He became oddly calm and said he wanted to forgive me for what had happened with James and let the past be the past. He said he would let me stay with Grandma, but only if he got what was rightfully his. I understood exactly what he was after, therefore I was horrified by the abrupt change in his demeanor. My grandfather had been quietly successful with his investments over the last few years. My father desired his inheritance because he had accumulated a sizable nest egg. He had the gall to come and demand money after everything they had done to us and after leaving us during the funeral. He was unaware, however, that Grandpa had anticipated this. While organizing Grandpa's study the day following the death, we discovered a note hidden in his desk drawer. All it said was, "Call Bob." Bob, who had visited him multiple times over the years, was both his lawyer and an old friend. We found out that Grandpa had left everything to me when we got in touch with him. I now owned every cent of his savings. Grandma would always have a place to live, protected from anyone who would try to take it away from her, thanks to the house being signed off to her. My father broke his cool exterior when I told him this. As he accused me of controlling Grandpa and turning him against his own son, his face flushed with anger. He went on a tirade about how he deserved his parents' money and how he had always supported them. He was the one who had left his family to pursue his greed, so it was almost comical that he was accusing me of deception. In an attempt to persuade me, my mother said things like, "Didn't you try to take away your sister's happiness? You now wish for us to suffer as well." However, I refused to back down. Grandpa had made up his mind, and I was going to respect it. I clarified that Grandpa had only recognized where their priorities lay and that Bob, his attorney, could confirm all I said. I also said that there was no conspiracy. The tension in the air was oppressive as they departed. As I watched them leave, I felt both relief and grief. Relief that Grandpa had kept us safe even when he was not around, and sadness that my connection with my parents had reached a breaking point. I'm now concentrating on reconstructing my life and caring for Grandma. Throughout it all, Michael has been amazing, offering consolation and support when I needed it most. However, I can't help but wonder whether there was anything I could have done differently to avoid all of this suffering. Reddit. I realize this post is lengthy, but I had to get everything out. Everything has become more problematic because of the inheritance situation, and I'm worried that my parents might try something extreme. I would be grateful for any guidance on legal protection. Has anyone else experienced a similar situation? How did you respond to it? Update 1. Things took a turn for the worst a few days after my last update. Apparently not satisfied with simply pestering my workplace, my father has begun reaching out to our company's customers. I learned this when a representative from one of our largest clients pulled me aside in a virtual meeting to voice concerns about upsetting emails they had received about me. These emails were kindly forwarded by them. My father was methodically attempting to damage my work relationships after he somehow managed to obtain our client list. According to the emails, I was a volatile individual who was stealing business secrets and taking advantage of older family members for financial gain. The fact that he disclosed information regarding customer projects that he shouldn't have known about is very troubling. Now, since he works for a partner company, I'm wondering if James was giving him false information. The legal department of my business has been engaged. In addition to the possible harm to my reputation, they are taking this extremely seriously because my father's activities are endangering business partnerships. My parents received a cease and desist letter from them, which only appears to have made them more angry. My parents have responded by launching a full-scale campaign against me on social media. In order to disseminate their story, they have made numerous phony personas in addition to publishing on their own ones. The stories they are narrating are getting more complex. They now assert that I have been deliberately deceiving my grandfather for years and that I somehow planned out his whole investing strategy to suit my own interests. They are unaware that I discovered something startling while looking through more of Grandpa's documents. Classic Grandpa, always the meticulous planner, had a secret compartment in his desk drawer that held a USB drive and a pile of papers. Along with comprehensive documentation of what seems to be systematic tax fraud and money laundering through my father's real estate business, the USB drive included years' worth of email correspondence between him and multiple offshore accounts. I informed Grandpa's attorney, Bob, about these results right away. He wasn't surprised, which was an odd response. Grandpa had apparently been gathering this information for years, recording each dubious business transaction and suspicious activity. Even photos of meetings with well-known dishonest business people were included in the folder. Bob clarified that Grandpa had been assembling evidence but was holding off on taking action until the perfect time. A set of emails revealing that my father had been embezzling money from his own parents' accounts for years was the most upsetting finding. Probably thinking they wouldn't notice, He had managed to get access to their financial portfolio and had started taking little amounts out. Grandpa did notice though, and instead of confronting him right away, he decided to record everything. To examine all the evidence, Bob is currently collaborating with a group of forensic accountants. According to him, we have more than enough to possibly file criminal charges in addition to defending against any legal claims my parents might make. I have mixed feelings about this. While I desire justice, I still find it difficult to imagine my own father being charged with a crime. James's eagerness to return to my parents' house is further clarified by the evidence. He and my father exchange a number of emails about business prospects that seem eerily similar to Ponzi scams. I'm beginning to question whether the entire charge that I attempted to woo James was a preemptive move, meant to discredit me should I ever find out what they were doing. In the meantime, my mother has started calling my grandmother every day, alternating between threatening her and guilt-tripping her. The most recent strategy is asserting that my father's health is suffering due to the stress of my betrayal, and that I will be held accountable if anything were to happen to him. On Bob's recommendation, my grandmother, God bless her, has begun recording these calls. We've put in new cybersecurity procedures and placed security cameras throughout the house to keep ourselves safe. Bob suggested that I freeze my credit and assisted me in securing all of my accounts. When my parents see their intimidation strategies aren't working, he fears they may attempt a financial retaliation. My job has been suffering due to the stress, but in a surprising turn of events, this has improved my standing inside the organization. My manager has been tremendously supportive after seeing the proof of my father's harassment campaign. My application for a completely remote job has been expedited, so I won't ever have to worry about working from my parents' house again. Throughout it all, Michael has been my pillar of support. In a spare room at my grandmother's house, he has assisted me in setting up a safe home office with backup systems and secured communications. We're also talking seriously about his moving to a job nearer to me, but I'm concerned that this would make my parents even more of a target. To help me cope with everything, I've started going to a therapist. She is assisting me in realizing that I am not to blame for anything and that it is acceptable to feel both love and resentment for my parents. Processing the knowledge that the folks who raised you are not who you believe them to be is a difficult process. We are currently awaiting the completion of the forensic accountant's analysis. Within a few weeks, Bob continues, we should have a good picture of the scope of my father's financial crimes. I'm getting ready for whatever might happen next. My parents, who know me well, will not tolerate this. I appreciate your prior support, Reddit. I never thought my family's drama would reveal something so significant. Has anybody else learned that their parents committed financial crimes? How did you decide whether or not to report them? I'd really appreciate some advice on this. Update 2. Emily arrived at our home this morning without warning. As I prepared myself for another altercation, I saw a broken lady instead of rage. Her normally flawless appearance was unkempt, and her eyes were red and puffy. She broke down in tears before I could even inquire what was wrong. She sobbed and told what had transpired. James had been in Chicago on a purported work trip. Emily had flown out to his hotel in order to surprise him. She believed a romantic gesture may help ease her feelings of insecurity over their relationship. Rather, she entered his room and found him with another lady. It wasn't the worst part though. Emily insisted on seeing his phone during their heated argument. The whole story of our family was broken by what she discovered. The offensive messages that had caused me to be expelled. I never made them. To escape suspicion, James had kept one of his mistress's phone numbers under my name. Using my name as a front for at least 3 different women, he had been having several encounters. The most startling aspect of all was perhaps how our parents reacted when Emily told them this information. Rather than offering their heartbroken daughter assistance, they advised her to remain silent and try to resolve the situation with James. They cared less about Emily's happiness and more about keeping up appearances. To spare the family the shame of a divorce, they even advised her to forgive him. Then Emily found something much more unsettling. She discovered emails on James's laptop that showed he and our father had been involved in more than just family affairs. Together, they had established a number of shell corporations to conceal funds from investors and taxes. James has been directing contracts to these shells at exorbitant pricing by virtue of his position at his company. Accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands were found via the money trail. Emily discovered pictures of James having meetings with strangers, all of which were stored in a secret folder called insurance. James appears to have kept records of everything, most likely for protection against any attempts to expose him. Another realization dawned on me as Emily told me these specifics. Not only was the inheritance at the center of the recent harassment of my clients and workplace, but it was also a frantic attempt to discredit me before I might learn of their financial machinations. They thought I might eventually find their digital trail because I work in technology. My sister is currently residing at Grandma's house with us. She is working with Bob to document what she has discovered and has filed for divorce. In addition to harming James, the data she presented could have disastrous consequences for our father. She discovered certain transactions that were exactly in line with the documents Grandpa had been gathering. The irony of it all? For years, James had been living beyond his means, using the proceeds of these illicit operations to fund his numerous affairs. In addition to wanting to be near James's place of employment, they moved back in with our parents since they were having financial difficulties as a result of his extravagant spending on his covert life. Through all of this, Emily has shown incredible bravery. She has already discussed her findings with the FBI, who are especially curious about the financial fraud's global components. She has been informed by the investigators that this case may be worth millions of dollars. Our parents' approach has entirely altered. They are now attempting to argue that they were duped by James and were unaware of the true situation. However, the data points to a different conclusion. Documents we have discovered reveal that our father was the mastermind behind numerous of these plots, with James acting as the front man for his business. Emily is suffering from the stress of it all. For the first time in our adult lives, we have been spending evenings discussing things, and she has begun visiting her own therapist. She has repeatedly expressed regret for not trusting me and for allowing James and our parents to influence her. Since she was just as much a victim of their manipulation as I was, I have forgiven her. Grandma has been incredible during this entire ordeal. She said Emily needed the master bedroom more than anyone else at the moment, so she gave it to her. We've resumed having dinners as a family, just the three of us and Michael when he comes over. It's amazing how tragedy can unite people and forge new ties from the ashes of past ones. Our cooperation is complete, and the FBI inquiry is still going on. Our parents are still working to preserve their reputation in the neighborhood and have engaged pricey attorneys, but more people are discovering the truth every day. Our father's former business partners have begun to come out with their own accounts of dubious activities. Sometimes Reddit, the reality is more amazing than you might think. I'm finally with my sister again, and we're stronger together than we were before. We're getting ready for what is probably going to be a protracted court struggle, but at least we're doing it together as a family. A true family founded on support and truth rather than deceit and manipulation. Has anyone else experienced a similar situation where revealing a single family secret revealed a whole network of dishonesty? How did you handle the fallout? Update 3. The pace of progress has exceeded everyone's expectations. The FBI intervened last Friday morning when my father and James were enjoying their customary business breakfast at their preferred high-end eatery. I will never forget the expressions on their faces as they were carried out in handcuffs, directly in front of the city's most affluent business community. In an instant, their meticulously constructed image of prosperous business people fell apart. Teams attacked their offices, our parents' home and a number of storage units we were unaware existed as part of the coordinated raid that took place in numerous locations at once. They discovered proof of a 3-continent money laundering scheme, offshore account details, and decades worth of fake documents. Over $50 million is the preliminary estimate of the whole scam. However, that wasn't even the most fulfilling aspect. Do you recall the pictures James had saved for insurance? As it happens, he wasn't the only one who kept records. 3 of his ex-girlfriends came forward with pictures, emails, and text conversations dating back years. They had been silently constructing their own case and were all aware of one another. The finest aspect. For months they had been collaborating with the FBI. James's recent business travels were watched, and every transaction was recorded. As one might anticipate, my mother's response to the arrest was quite predictable. She made an effort to play the victim by saying she was unaware of their illicit actions. When the FBI disclosed that they had recordings of her actively engaging in money laundering through her charitable foundation, that story completely collapsed. All those lavish galas she held to raise money. Simple plots to wash up shady finances. There has been extensive media coverage. The story was carried by all local news channels and even by several national ones. Prominent businessmen and son-in-law arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The headlines continued to appear. Overnight, my father's meticulously cultivated reputation as a community leader and benefactor was destroyed. The reaction from their social circle was fast and harsh. Those who once admired them at charity functions now act as though they had never met them. Their church requested that they resign from all committees, and the country club canceled their membership. In an effort to protect their own reputations, former business partners are going out of their way to assist the authorities. James's business quickly distanced itself from the situation. He was fired right away, and they are completely assisting with the investigation. As it seems, he had also been defrauding them by inflating contracts and keeping the difference for himself. His name has become poisonous in the sector, And his professional reputation has been utterly wrecked. What the forensic accountants at the FBI discovered made me laugh aloud. Grandpa left that property in the trust in Florida. It was more than simply a dilapidated house. It held the secret to their whole scheme. Grandpa had purchased it especially to serve as evidence after learning that it was being used as a front for money laundering. He was aware that the property inquiry would reveal everything if they attempted to challenge the will. Even from the afterlife, he played them like a chess master. James and my father both agreed to plea bargains last week. The punishment is severe. My father will serve 15 years in federal prison, James will serve 12 years, and all assets related to their crimes will be forfeited. For the remainder of their lives, they will both be making restitution. Next month, my mother will be sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison for her involvement in the money laundering conspiracy. After all of this, Emily is stronger than ever. She started her own business with the settlement, which was the little money left over after asset forfeiture, once the divorce was finalized. We've never been closer since she moved into a comfortable apartment close to Grandma's house. Our parents worked very hard to sever the sister link, but it has since become indestructible. There was more karma to come. Do you recall how my parents attempted to ruin my reputation in the workplace? The board of my organization was so pleased with my handling of the matter that they elevated me to the position of Director of Security Operations. I now oversee a group of people that work to stop the exact type of scam that James and my father perpetrated. Last month, Michael relocated here, and we recently purchased a home a few blocks away from Grandma. By the way, she's doing fantastically. She used her experience to help others by starting a support group for families impacted by financial fraud. What about the valuable social standing of my mother? When I last heard from her, her old pals were openly avoiding her while she was shopping at the bargain grocery store. Her friends have made it apparent that she is no longer welcome in their group, and her expensive jewelry and clothing have all been confiscated. According to Reddit, justice isn't always served without flawless karma. Despite going through a lot, my family has emerged stronger, closer and wiser. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me along the way. And to everyone who has experienced similar betrayals in their family, never give up. When the truth finally surfaces, it's a magnificent moment. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.